Welcome to r/relationships, where Karen bashes OP's cooking and really ends up regretting it. My brother's new girlfriend insulted my cooking, so I kicked her out of my house. My brother recently introduced his girlfriend to the family. She seemed really nice when we first met, so I immediately invited them over for dinner the following week. A little background for context. My brother and I were born in the US, but we grew up in France. We were immersed in French culture for most of our lives until I returned to the US for college. Naturally, I grew up eating and cooking French cuisine, and I decided to showcase that for this dinner. I planned a menu that included roast chicken with garlic cloves, fresh rosemary, herbes de Provence, and a touch of salt and pepper. For the kids, I made a cheesy potato dish. I also prepared ratatouille, a fresh salad, and since it was January 6th, I made a gelatin dessert too. To round it out, I served some ice cream and had a couple bottles of French wine. I wanted the dinner to be meaningful, a way to share the food we grew up eating and something I felt confident in cooking. An hour before the dinner, my brother texted to ask if it was okay to bring along his girlfriend's mom because she was in town visiting. I said of course, the more the merrier. They arrived on time and everything started off fine, but as soon as we sat down to eat, things took a turn. The girlfriend and her mom were acting completely different than when I had met her previously. They started critiquing everything, starting with the potatoes. "What are these potatoes? They need more seasoning, girl," the mom said. The girlfriend chimed in with, "Your chicken looks like it needs more seasoning. Salt and pepper aren't real seasoning." I was taken back, but I tried to explain the recipe was from my French grandmother. It's simple, but it relies on the aromatics to flavor the dish. They brushed it off and kept going, saying things like, "Y'all don't know how to season your food," and "Don't worry, I'll give you my recipe." My husband and my brother were sitting there clearly panicking, probably wondering if I was about to lose it. Meanwhile, my 8-year-old son, bless him, was trying to cheer me up by saying, "This is my favorite, Mom. It's so good." I was holding back tears at this point because I had poured so much effort into this meal, and instead of appreciating it, they were tearing it apart. Then we got to dessert. I proudly brought out the dish, which is a traditional almond-filled cake. They both turned it down immediately. "Almonds in a cake?" they said, almost like it was offensive. They opted to just eat the vanilla ice cream I had on hand, which wasn't even meant to be the main dessert. Their attitude was the last straw for me. I snapped. I told them they were ignorant and uncultured. Then I stood there, held the door open, and waited for them to grab their stuff and leave. My husband and brother didn't say a word, but they knew I wasn't joking. After they left, I finally let myself cry. I was angry and hurt. Later, my brother called to apologize for what happened, but he also said I shouldn't have insulted them or kicked them out. The girlfriend texted me saying she didn't mean any harm and that she and her mom were just playing around because her mom is old-fashioned about food. I told her I didn't believe that for a second. I also made it clear she's welcome to date my brother, but she's not welcome in my house again. I'm proud of the food I make and the traditions behind it, and I can't handle that kind of disrespect in my own home. My brother says I overreacted and that his girlfriend feels really bad now and wants to make it up to me. I don't think I overreacted. I don't see how I could ever invite them back into my house again after they tore apart something so meaningful to me. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. They were rude and insensitive. I'm a picky eater myself, but I wouldn't say things like that to someone who's graciously hosting me as a guest. I'll also at least try the food before opening my big fat mouth and insulting someone who worked hard on preparing a nice dish. Don't invite them back. If they want food they like, they can cook themselves. Am I the jerk for wanting to name my son after a Star Trek character? I, 33 female, am 7 months pregnant with our son, who doesn't have a name yet. I also really like Star Trek. If you're familiar with the series, you will certainly remember Dr. Julian Bashir. I've always thought Julian is a pretty name, but I'd forgotten about it before my rewatch. So when I heard it again, I texted my husband asking his opinion about the name. He loved it, so for a while, we both wanted to name our son Julian. I didn't tell him where I got the name. We've been doing that since I found out I was pregnant, texting each other names we've heard somewhere or read somewhere. And we didn't always specify where we had heard it. None of the names were something we both liked until Julian. Yesterday, I was watching Star Trek again while my husband was home. He happened to pass by when the name Julian was said on screen. He stopped and asked me if this was where I got the name. I said yes. He said, "We can't name our son Julian." I asked why, and he said he loved it. He said it's just weird to name our kid after a character, and we'll be jerks if we do that to our son. I said that I just liked the name, as did he, until now that he knows it's from Star Trek. He says people will laugh or make fun of our son if they find out. I say no one is entitled to know the backstory of his name. It's a name that we like and that's it. He said it's not something people do, so I suggested to come here and see what people think. Am I the jerk for wanting to name our son Julian, or is he the jerk for rejecting it just because it's a character? It's a real name, not like I want to name him Spock. No jerks here. That name is pretty normal. Like you said, it's not as if you're trying to name your baby Spock. At the same time, I'm a firm believer that parents should both have input, so I wouldn't necessarily say your husband is the jerk either. Try to convince him or find another name that you both like. OP. I won't insist on the name if he absolutely hates it. One of his main arguments was that unbiased people would back him up on this, so I wanted to test his theory. He readily admits if he's wrong, so I hope if Reddit backs me up, he'll see that it's not weird. Not the jerk. For one, you should name your kid whatever you want, regardless of the backstory. As you said, it's really no one else's business. I have also never heard of someone's name being made fun of because of its origin. Secondly, it's a common enough name. It isn't like you're naming your kid Khaleesi from Game of Thrones or something easily identifiable from a show. No jerks here. My dad wanted to name me Zelda, but really didn't want to name me Zelda because of The Legend of Zelda. At least Julian is more normal. OP. Zelda is also a pretty name to be honest, but I would also hesitate because of how much it's connected to the character nowadays. Not the jerk. The number of kids named Hermione has skyrocketed after Harry Potter became huge. My dad wanted to name me after a Star Trek character as well. My mom said no because it was a name her family wouldn't be able to pronounce. However, that was the only reason she said no. OP. I'm curious what your dad wanted to name you. I wouldn't name a kid Hermione because now that name is very closely associated with Harry Potter, but fortunately, I can't say the same for Julian. It was Tiberius, after Captain James Tiberius Kirk. To be honest, I might have been teased if I was given that name. There was also a Roman emperor by the name before, and none of those dudes were particularly nice people. Update. I showed this post to my husband and he read the comments. He's still reading and laughing sometimes, but he's already admitted that he was stressing over it too much and building up unlikely scenarios in his head. As I suspected, he's just very nervous about becoming a dad and wants everything to be perfect. He also asked me to add that he's not a stubborn, no fun allowed person as he comes off in this post, which I can confirm. Anyway, Julian is back in the game. If the game was darts, he'd definitely win, but we'll still look around for other names we like. Thanks, Reddit. A payroll glitch that vastly overpaid me for months. This happened years ago, and I've never told anyone about it. I think enough time has passed that they can't ask for the money back, but honestly, I still get a little nervous when I think about it. Back then, I was working at a fabrication shop, making about $26 an hour. Pretty decent pay, but the real money came from certain tasks. Some jobs paid close to $70 an hour, but those were hard to come by because the company was stingy about assigning them. On a good week, I'd maybe get 5 to 10 hours of $70 per hour work, which was always a nice boost to my paycheck. The system was simple. We'd clock in and out of jobs on these computers, and each job was tied to a specific task or company. Pretty straightforward, and nothing ever seemed off. Then, one day, the tech guys showed up. They spent a while messing with the computers we used to clock in and out. Nobody explained what they were doing, and nothing seemed different on my end, so I just kept doing my thing. Fast forward to payday, and I noticed my check was way bigger than usual. Like, way bigger. When I looked closer, I saw that I had been paid for about 20 hours of $70 per hour work that week. At first, I thought maybe I just lucked out and didn't realize some of the tasks I'd done qualified for the higher rate. I didn't question it too much because who complains about extra money, right? The next week, my paycheck was even bigger. I had logged 25 hours of $70 per hour tasks. That's when I started to feel like something wasn't adding up. I kept my head down and didn't say anything, but I was definitely suspicious. By the third week, I decided to mentally keep track of how many hours I actually spent on the higher paying tasks. By the end of the week, I had about 10 hours of $70 per hour work. My paycheck though? It showed 22 hours. At that point, I knew something was off, but I didn't say a word. I wasn't about to open that can of worms. Another guy in the shop mentioned that his paycheck was bigger than usual too. We exchanged this knowing look like, yeah, we're not talking about this. It was one of those unspoken agreements where we both decided it was better to keep quiet and enjoy the ride. This went on for months. Every paycheck had way more $70 hours than I had actually worked. I kept track for a while, but honestly, I stopped bothering because the extra money kept coming. At one point, the office staff started asking some vague questions about how we were clocking in and out of jobs. They didn't accuse anyone of anything though, and I just played dumb. IT showed up at the computer a few times, tinkering with stuff, but nobody ever came right out and said, "Hey, we're overpaying you." Eventually, after 4 or 5 months, the error must have been fixed because my paychecks went back to normal. By then, I had stashed all that extra money in savings just in case they came back and said, "Oops, we overpaid you, and now we need it back." Not long after, lockdown hit. Work slowed to a crawl, and the company laid most of us off. They didn't seem to care about keeping anyone around, and it felt like they were just cutting their losses. I ended up finding a job at another shop once things started picking back up, and that was that. Do I feel guilty? Honestly, not really. That company was shady in so many ways and treated its employees like garbage. They'd nickel and dime us whenever they could, so I didn't exactly feel bad about taking the extra money. Should I have said something? I don't know, maybe. But looking back, I'm not sure it would have made a difference. If anything, they probably would have found a way to make it my fault. Today I messed up by creating an alter ego that now shows up on my credit report and background check. About 10 years ago, I created a fake persona as a joke to mess with my boss, who was super gullible but had a great sense of humor. He was desperate to hire for a sales position and kept saying, "I'd hire just about anyone right now." So I thought, all right, let's see about that. I made up this completely ridiculous but somewhat believable resume for a guy named Ricky. Ricky was a southern redneck with the title of Assistant to the VP of Local Janitorial Operations at Chuck E. Cheese. Ricky was a southern guy with the title of Assistant to the VP of Local Janitorial Operations at Chuck E. Cheese. He was also a semi-retired rock star who played at dive bars and an ex-pit stop mechanic for Dale back in the day. The resume had funny job descriptions and a cover letter that made it sound like this guy was ready to conquer the world of sales. To sell it, I trimmed my beard down into a Hulk Hogan-style mustache, dug out an old mullet wig from my Joe Dirt costume days, and staged a cringe-worthy candid headshot. My girlfriend took the photo, and I emailed it to my boss a few days after submitting Ricky's application, saying I was planning to swing by for an interview because he'd be stupid not to hire me. My boss had no clue it was me. To take it up a notch, I started calling his office phone in a deep southern accent. I just dropped my voice by an octave and leaned into my inner Blake Shelton. I'd tell him things like, "I'm ready to work whenever you are, boss man." He seemed a bit uneasy, probably thinking some weirdo might actually show up, but I stayed completely quiet about it to everyone else. Listening to him talk about this weird guy with coworkers was hilarious. One Friday before a holiday, I went all in. I showed up at the office in character, rocking the mullet wig, mustache, a jean jacket, boots, and an Ozzy Osbourne shirt I found at Goodwill. I stayed in character all day. The whole office found out and thought it was the funniest thing ever. After I left that job, they even kept the bit alive by repurposing a storage room as Ricky's office, complete with a nameplate on the door. It stayed that way for years. From there, Ricky took on a life of his own. I created social media for him over the years. I'd post ridiculous stories in the worst grammar possible, random videos, and all kinds of nonsense. My friends loved it, and it kind of became an inside joke. They'd ask, "What's Ricky up to these days?" I even got pretty good at Photoshop, so I could drop him into random pictures and come up with wild backstories. At one picture, I recorded a few songs as Ricky, playing the guitar intentionally out of tune. There was even a diss track. The whole thing became my outlet. My day job as a sales director at a software company can get pretty stressful, so it was nice to have this silly alter ego to lighten things up. Sometimes I'd let a bit of Ricky's energy bleed into my daily life. I could switch on the accent whenever I felt like it, which always got a laugh. Ricky's slogan became, "Mopping floors, drinking chores," and I leaned into it. When I bought a C8 Corvette, I made jokes about it being a trailer park Ferrari. Over the years, Ricky has been a great way to stay connected with friends I don't see often anymore. It makes them laugh, and honestly, it makes me laugh too. I'll look back at some of the stuff I came up with and think, how did I even come up with that? The fun and games took a weird turn recently though. My wife and I are selling our house and buying a new one. When we were working with the lender, I got asked some verification questions for my credit report. Out of nowhere, the name Ricky came up as a known associate. I was like, wait, what? It turns out Ricky somehow shows up on my credit report and my wife's too. Apparently, when we rented out her house to a nice older gentleman a couple of years ago, the lease got flagged under Ricky's name for some reason. Ricky also pops up as a co-tenant on a corporate apartment I rented years ago. He even has his own background checks, minus his social security number. This has been a nightmare to explain to the lender. Our actual tenant doesn't show up on their records, but Ricky does. We had to dig up lease documents to prove the real tenant exists. I have no idea how data mining messed this up so badly, but Ricky has officially outstayed his welcome in my life. My pregnant sister thinks I was insensitive after I didn't accommodate her chair preferences. It was my grandma's birthday last Sunday, and since my parents' house is the biggest and can fit everyone, they hosted the party. My siblings and I were all there. my sister, who's 26, who's 7 months pregnant, and my brother, who's 29, who has a 2-year-old son. They're both married and out of the house now, so I'm the only one still living at home. The day started early. Dad and I were up at 5 a.m. helping my mom set up and prep food for about 20 people, plus a bunch of kids. It was exhausting before it even started. We swapped out the fancy dining room chairs for the regular event chairs because kids at family gatherings have a way of getting food or crayons on everything. It's happened before, and Mom wasn't about to scrub the upholstery again. We did leave 2 of their nicer chairs out for my grandparents because they're elderly and would be more comfortable. Nobody seemed to care about the switch, except my sister, who gave the setup a dirty look but didn't say anything. By the time the lunch actually happened at 2 p.m., I was running on fumes. Between setting up, cooking, and dealing with general chaos, all I wanted to do was eat and crash. After everyone was done eating and we cleared the tables, people spread out. Some were outside watching the kids, some were chatting in the living room. I was helping my grandma to the bathroom when we came back and found my sister sitting in Grandma's chair. She stood up with an exaggerated sigh and said something snarky about how we should have left all the fancy chairs downstairs. I explained the reasoning, and she just rolled her eyes and walked off. Later, I was helping my mom bring out dessert, and my sister was sitting in one of the regular chairs, looking annoyed. She let out a dramatic sigh and asked me to go upstairs to get her one of the fancy chairs. I just ignored her because, at that point, I had a pounding headache and zero patience. She followed me and told me again, and I told her that it was Mom's call, so if she had a problem, she should take it up with her. She refused, of course. My brother, who could see I was about to lose it, told her to drop it. That just made her more annoyed, and she snapped at him to stay out of it. When the cake came out, I finally sat down to enjoy my piece, thinking maybe I could salvage a little piece in the day. Nope. She came over, took my cake, and told me again to go get her chair, like I was a servant. I wanted to lose it on her, but I kept my cool, and I told her that if she wanted a fancy chair so bad, she could ask her husband to go get it. If the kids messed it up, that would be her problem to explain to Mom. She perked up at the idea, but then had the nerve to ask me to go upstairs because her husband was eating cake. That was it for me. I got up, kissed my grandparents goodbye, excused myself, and went up to my room. I locked the door and decided I was done with the day. About 15 minutes later, my brother-in-law came knocking, asking me to grab the chair. I just ignored him. Not my problem anymore. The next day, I got a text from my sister accusing me of tattling to Mom and being insensitive at Grandma's party. The funny thing is, I didn't say anything to my mom. Turns out my brother mentioned it, and Mom had a talk with her about the whole chair fiasco. Now she's mad at me, even though I wasn't the one who told on her. It's been a few days, and I'm still annoyed about it, but I'm also wondering if I overreacted. Maybe I should have just grabbed the stupid chair to keep the peace. Then again, I don't feel like I'm totally in the wrong, considering how pushy she was. Why did she not ask her husband to get the chair from the start? Why was that responsibility placed with you instead of him? I would fill your sister in that her tantrum was witnessed by many, and you weren't the one who tattled to your mom. You didn't overreact. Her behavior was entitled and rude. Karen wife is jealous that I'm performing husband duties for my friend. I, 36 male, have a longtime friend, 34 female, who I live about 4 blocks from. We've always been very close. Her husband passed 3 years ago after a 9-month battle with brain cancer, during which she was his full-time caretaker. I was also very close with her husband, and since I lived close by, I would go over and help as much as I could, be it cooking, cleaning, taking the kids out to do things, yard work, and maintenance around the house, especially as he declined and required round-the-clock care. After he passed, I've continued to help my friend and her kids, and I spent a lot of time with her kids, who are now 11 and 9. Last year, I married my wife, who I started dating after my friend's husband had passed, so this isn't anything new. Since then, there have been consistent arguments about me performing husband duties for my friend. Some examples of the things she was upset about. My friend called because when she woke up, a pipe had burst in the ceiling and she couldn't find a plumber who would come out that day. I'm a contractor, so I was able to call a friend and he went over ASAP. And then I headed over and I helped her clean up the mess and helped with her talking to her insurance and hiring a remediation company. After that was done, I helped her demo and replace the drywall. Her car broke down, so I picked up her kids from school and went and played basketball with them while she got it to the shop and grabbed a rental. And then the boys wanted to have a pizza party, so we grabbed some pizzas and had dinner at the park. She was re-landscaping her backyard and putting in some raised planter beds, and I went over on my day off to help her. My wife is always welcome. She doesn't usually want to go, and instead she thinks that I should let her figure it out because she's a big girl and needs to stop acting like I'm her husband. She's even gone as far as suggesting that my friend wants to steal me away from my wife because she needs someone to take care of her. ETA. I met this friend and her husband in college while they were dating, and I was in a long-term relationship. I was a groomsman in their wedding, and I am the godfather of both their sons, and I was asked to be before both were born. No jerks here. I have a friend who does similar things for me since my husband passed, and I know that he's trying to look out for me because he was my husband's best friend. I really appreciate his help, but I would draw the line at inviting him to stay for pizza or hang out with my kids in case his wife, who's a really cool person, thought it was too much. If your wife is starting to feel uncomfortable, then you need to dial it back a bit. Save your help for the big things, like major do-it-yourself projects, and keep up with your friends socially by inviting her over to your house to hang out with you and your wife together. Info. Are you helping out and spending time with your friend more than you have free time to relax with your wife? Have you ever canceled plans with your wife to help your friend? Have you tried to involve your wife in some of these activities, like the meal with the kids? Or do you keep it so your involvement with your friend and her kids is separate? Have you not considered that your wife probably expected your assistance and involvement in your friend's life to reduce, if not stop completely after you were married? I would be asking if they're still spending special time together, going on dates, giving time for them as a couple. When these aren't in play, a person starts to wonder. Exactly. If OP skipping off to have his cup filled by friends and the kids, and his wife is a second thought, there's a problem. 100% wife said, "I'm feeling things," and OP went full defensive protector mode over his second family and not his wife. OP, you're the jerk. You're the jerk. I say that because there have been many reasonable comments posted here, and I haven't seen a single one that asked you to go no contact with the boys or your friends. But you've shown no acceptance of any type of compromise or any validation whatsoever of your wife's feelings. You simply came here for validation that you're right and she's wrong. That says to me that you value your second family over her. I'm expecting to be downvoted, but honestly, divorce your wife. She's not your priority. You already have a family. Hope you and your late bestie's wife are happy together, and I hope your wife finds a husband who puts her first. You're the jerk. You're the jerk. It's one thing to help a friend when needed, but you seem to have a second family with this woman and her kids. The fact that your wife is invited to see the four of you being a family and she's the outsider doesn't make it any better. An emergency is one thing. Helping out with the gardening is a horse of a different color. You're the jerk. When my husband and I got married, we vowed to protect each other's heart. We vowed to prioritize each other, thus our marriage and family above all things. Whenever a situation arises, it always boils down to how it will affect us in our marriage. Communicate, compromise, and set healthy boundaries. I'm not implying for you to totally cut them out of your life, but set some boundaries that are acceptable to your wife. Please don't make her feel like the third wheel in her own marriage. Watching on the sideline as her husband plays family in front of her. Reassure her that she and your family will always be your priority as it should be. You married her. You made your vow to her. She's your wife and partner, and will be the mother to your future kids. Be the godfather to those kids, but please don't burn your family to keep your friend's family warm. It's you're the jerk. Priorities and boundaries should have been established from the start. A new manager was older than me, so they knew the best way to run an event. I used to work part-time for my university running student events. Experience is the best teacher. I had participated in these events as a student, assisted in these events under someone else as part of my scholarship, and as a staff member, ran the events myself. We had a new college head who was much older, approximately 50 to 60, while everyone else was in their early 20s. This woman was the most pig-headed, arrogant fool you can imagine, and despite being new, she wouldn't sit back and observe how things worked or listen to those of us on our team who had been there for years. No matter what you told her, when she announced something that wouldn't work or would cause problems, the answer was always the same. I'm older, so I know best. Didn't matter if it would take you longer to do it her way, or in one case it was technically illegal. Of course, mistakes that we had warned her would happen were always someone else's fault or swept under the rug. During event planning, one look at the schedule told me she hadn't allocated the team properly. Email exchange. Me. Probably not a good idea to have the whole team in an hour before the event, most of them standing around doing nothing. Best to get 5 or so people in for setup, most of the team in for running event, and hold back another 3 to 4 for cleanup. College head. No, I want everyone in, helping out equally an hour before the event. Me. They're only meant to do 2 hours of work per event. If you have them an hour early for a 2 event, that's 3 hours. They'll all leave before cleanup. The slackers will slack off, and the proactives will end up doing everything. Her. I'm older than you. I know best. Just do as you're told. Cue malicious compliance. Me. Fine, but I've got some personal business to go directly after the event. I'll handle procurement and setup, but we'll need to leave right after the event is over. Her. That's fine. On to other business. Day of the event, the whole team showed up an hour before the setup. As expected, 5 or so did all the setup work while most of the team just stood around on their phones. Some even got bored and wandered off. It was not the team members' fault for standing around. Only so many people can do meal prep and set up tables without getting in each other's way. 10 minutes before the event, college head shows up and everything's running smoothly. Event was a lot of fun. Some of the team continued to wander off. Some ran the events, some participated. I was running around as a gopher, letting the college head take credit for the event in front of everyone. Not doing any work, mind you, but taking credit for it. I made sure to remind her I had to leave right at the end of the event for personal business in front of the other college heads several times. To be extra spiteful, I neglected to stop several team members from wandering off who had done no work other than stand around talking and eating, and encouraged several people who had definitely done 2 hours of work to call it a night and thank them for their help. Forgetful me, I also didn't tell team members standing around during events to start cleaning up as things were finishing. All the free food was gone, all the games were over. Both students and team members were wandering off into the night, and all of a sudden, college head. Wait, where are you going? There's so much mess, and we've got to put away all of the tables and tidy up the different games, but everyone has left. Me. Yes, we probably should have saved up a few team members to do cleanup, but they've all already done their 2 hours. Anyway, like I told you earlier, I've got some personal business to attend directly after the event, so I'll see you tomorrow. Her. What personal business is it? This will take over an hour to do all on my own. Me. I'm sorry, but I said personal business because I wasn't comfortable discussing it with you or the team about what it actually was, but it is quite personal and I'm gonna be late. I wandered off home for my personal business of closing all of my curtains and playing Xbox, chuckling at the thought of that arrogant woman having to do all of that work by herself. The formal complaint she put in for me leaving didn't really go anywhere, as I just forwarded the email exchange to management. Sadly, pig-headed people are pig-headed because they don't learn no matter what. I eventually quit, and a few months later was introduced to my replacement's replacement, who was also ready to quit. Am I the jerk for cutting back on work to prove a point to my wife? My wife is usually an angel, but has recently gotten into a friendship with a woman who I personally believe is a bad influence on her. Not in a patronizing way, more of a lay down with dogs, get up with fleas types of situation. I never said anything about her because frankly it doesn't affect me. Until it did. A few months ago, my wife began pressuring me to do more around the house. Before I get an instant "you're the jerk," we already split chores and childcare. Admittedly, she had a bigger cut than I because she's a stay-at-home mom, but I do most of the cooking, breakfasts and dinners. Lunch is her responsibility for her and the boys. I take out the garbage and I do laundry, and I deep clean the bathrooms once a week. I do also help with our boys' homework and such. She insists that I'm not doing enough and that I should be doing more around the house. I tried having discussions with her, asking what she expected from me. Namely, all chores and child rearing should be my duty, it seems. And for months, it seemed to be going nowhere. She used words when she was speaking to me, which made it feel manipulative. It boiled over when we were out with friends one night, and she began talking about how I never helped out and how I use her as a house slave, her words. I will admit, I saw red. This next part is where I may be the jerk. I didn't say anything that night, but the next day, I asked my boss to be given reduced hours for the next little bit due to stress, and I took over everything in the house. I cooked breakfast and made lunch for the boys before I drove them to school. I cleaned the house top to bottom. I did every dish we had twice and so on. My wife was blindingly happy and bragged to her friend that she finally had worn me in. She didn't lift a finger for around a month. Then she began asking why we never went on dates anymore and complaining that she wanted to get her nails done as they were growing in. I explained that I had to take that out of our budget so we could continue to afford everything else, but we could absolutely have a movie night in and I could paint her nails for her. She was unhappy with that solution, so I asked her if she would want to get a part-time job to pay for either luxuries. You would have thought I had asked her if she wanted to join a cult. She then asked if I could just pick up more shifts at work to cover her other expenses and used the phrase, "be a man," which I found more than a little insulting. I then asked her if she would be willing to go back to splitting the chores and such, which is when she began to catch on that the two were related. She yelled at me that I was being a manipulative jerk for doing this and even claimed it was financial mistreatment. I stood strong for a while, but now I'm questioning my methods because even I feel what I did was a bit underhanded. So, am I the jerk? You're the jerk for so many reasons. First off, you have no right to decide who your wife gets to be friends with, and you also sound extremely judgmental by the way you talk about her friend. If her friend is helping her gain new insights and perspectives on life that you don't agree with, that sounds like a you problem. Secondly, it's obvious your wife was feeling unappreciated. She's probably so used to the workload that you dump on her that she didn't realize it before. But now that she's gained the courage to discuss her feelings with you, you decide that you're going to stop working your normal hours in order to get back at her? Thirdly, if you actually tell her that she can't get her nails done because you had to remove it from your budget, then I'm sorry, but you seriously need to find a better paying job. Why did you even start a family if you can't afford to take care of them? I'm proud of the friend for waking your wife up to the value that she brings to this relationship, and I hope that she leaves you and finds a man who will treat her like the queen that she is. I also hope she takes you to the cleaners in court so that you will have to go back to working your big boy hours at your joke of a job. Am I the jerk for moving out after my parents told me to pay rent? This story happened almost a year back, and when I told my friends about it, they said I should post it here because they were split 50-50. So I, 19 male, moved out of my parents' house about a year ago. There was nothing wrong in my life. I had a good upbringing. I loved being home. I had a lot of friends, and my parents were loving. Or so I thought. Anyways, I was going to have a big 18th birthday, as it's the legal age where I stay, in Australia, and means you go from a boy to a man, kid to adult. I had a venue rented out, and I had family and friends coming from all over to celebrate with me. We had a blast that night. I had my first drink and almost made it my last. I don't remember anything from that night, but from the photos that I've seen, it looked like I had a good night, so I was happy. A few days after that night, my parents set me down to have a talk. They told me that I'm a man now, and that I've been working a lot of hours, and yet they haven't received anything. They told me that as soon as I started working, they expected me to help pay rent. Obviously, I didn't know any of that because I didn't get told that. They told me that I should have known better, but now that I'm 18, they expect me to help with the rent. Honestly, I didn't mind helping them if they asked. I was 16 when I got my first job at McDonald's, and I'm now working in construction. But they made it seem like I was in the wrong for not giving them money. And I get where they're coming from, but from my perspective, all I had seen was green. All I saw was a triple-digit paycheck that I wanted to spend straight away. Anyways, I told them I'd start helping them from now on, but it wasn't good enough for them. They told me that I had to pay them back all of the money that I should have given them when I first started working, which was almost $10,000. I said no flat out, and they got mad. They told me that either I pay rent and pay them back what I owed, or I move out and find my own place. So that's what I did. I moved out a few days after to my friend's house for a bit until I found my own apartment and have been living here for about 8 to 10 months. As soon as I moved out, I got bombarded with calls and texts saying that I disrespected them by not paying them what I owed and by making it harder for them to live now that they don't have someone washing or doing their laundry, taking out their rubbish, and all the other little stuff. They're both in their early 40s and are more than capable of doing it. My friends asked me why I never introduced them to my parents and told them what I've told you. Some of them already hated my parents, and some of them said it was my duty as their son. I honestly didn't know I had to give them my money or help out. I would have if they would have asked, but I feel like they just disrespected and tried to gaslight me into giving them money. I just need to know if I'm the jerk or not. Edit. A lot of people have asked me what my cultural background is, as if it has something to do with my situation. My mother's from Chile and my dad is Samoan. As I know of, both cultures do expect help, but mostly in the form of chores and keeping the house clean. It isn't until you're 18 and still living there that you're expected to pay rent. I do have siblings, and they had jobs before they were 18 too. They were never made to pay rent before they were 18, nor did my parents ask for backdated rent. Just wanted to clear up the air with some frequently asked questions. Edit 2. As some of you have pointed out, it is too my better judgment that I should have helped out without having to be told. I will take that as a fault of mine. But what I won't accept and can now clearly see that backdating rent to a minor which is already bad in itself, will never be acceptable, and I stand firm on my decision of not paying and moving out. I do, however, have a family dinner in a few days with my parents and siblings, so if you want an update after that, I'll be happy to make one. Thanks for all the help and support. It makes me happy knowing that I made the right choice and to have unbiased opinions on the matter. Not the jerk. I was going to say no jerks here until they told you that you owed them $10,000 for backdated rent payments. You mentioned this, and it's absolutely insane, especially since they only told you about helping with rent after you turned 18. They shouldn't start charging you as soon as you get a job at 16. It's typical to ask for help with rent after your kid turns 18. It isn't typical to start charging your kid for rent at the age of 16 the moment they get a job and say nothing for 2 years. You owe your parents nothing, OP. So they expected backdated rent from when you were 16 to 18? Not the jerk. They're responsible for paying for your living costs as a minor. My parents are demanding I raise their grandchild. So I, 27 female, was estranged from my deceased sister for 5 years after she had an affair with my fiance that not only I found out about, but resulted in a pregnancy. I cut the two of them out of my life and declared that they were done to me. They had a kid who is now 4, but maybe close to 5 now, I'm not sure. I've never met their kid. I never wanted to meet the kid or be in their life. My parents knew their grandchild and supported the child while my sister and ex were alive. They were on and off after I left him. I heard from friends that their breakups were quite explosive. When they both recently passed in an accident, people were shocked, but also kind of not, because a lot of people assumed they were arguing and not focusing on the road. Their kid went into foster care. My parents tried to take their kid in, but were denied on the grounds of health and mobility. The kid's paternal relatives did not want to take them in. No surprises there though, and so my parents turned to me. I'm now engaged again to Luke, and we bought our forever home last year. We're stable and happy, and my parents believe we should take in their grandchild. I told them I would not be a good fit to raise the kid, and I was sorry, but that was the end of the discussion as far as I'm concerned. Luke told them that he was with me on that. My parents went behind my back to try and talk him into it, but he told me, and I told them to stop. They begged me again to reconsider and said, imagine how nice it would be to know my nibbling to get to be there. To have a kid who is part of our family, kept in our family, and raised lovingly around people who want the best for them. I told them that that's not a job for me and to let it go. A few days went by, and I thought maybe they'd drop it. Then they called and told me that they think about how good it will look for me, the betrayed sister and ex-fiancé, to have enough love and compassion to raise the kid that was conceived out of said betrayal and love them and be the best mom to that kid who could exist. They said people would think I'm a saint and would always think of me as an incredible person. I told them I am no saint. I do not want to be a saint. I don't need to be seen as some incredible, amazing person, and I'm not going to raise their grandkid just to look good to other people, and they need to stop asking me to. They told me I was heartless and asked how I could not care at all about a kid who is my own flesh and blood and who's been tossed around the system in just a few weeks, because according to them, the kid has been in 4 homes already. They said I should not be able to turn my back on family like this, and I should have more compassion for them, who were told by the authorities that they will not be allowed to raise their grandkid. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. As sad as it is, having the kid at home will remind you of your ex and sister's betrayal, plus their passing. I would be insulted by the fact that they think you should do it to look good. Not the jerk. This kid is not your flesh and blood. The kid is theirs. I'm sorry for the grief they're putting you through. Not the jerk. I can't imagine a betrayed ex to be a good stepmother for an orphaned kid, least when the person went no contact with family of that betrayal. Sounds more like the ideal setup for an evil stepmother. Am I the jerk for assuming my friend was keeping her partner away because I didn't like him when actually he didn't like me? I, 38 female, have known Allie, 40 female, for 15 years. We first met at work when we were single and the youngest people there. We became good friends and socialized together and still do. Allie then met her partner, Matt, who she is still with years later. He does not share her interests. He's an avid football supporter, UK, and very anti the rival football team. Even when he doesn't go to watch matches live, he watches at the pub with male friends. He plays sports with his friends. She's a football widow. She likes going to the theater and to dinner. He'll go to dinner with her, but doesn't much enjoy the theater unless it's a serious play. She likes musicals, and she ends up going with female friends. She says she doesn't mind. They aren't joined at the hip, and she has plenty of friends and relatives who enjoy going to the theater with her, and that she doesn't want to go to football. I wonder. I'm known for being brutally honest. When she introduced me to Matt, she asked my opinion, and I gave it. I didn't really see them together. I didn't really like that he drinks and swears. He has a professional job, but isn't very refined, unlike her, and I found him a bit difficult to connect to. At the time, she was hurt, but got over it, and generally just engineered it, so I never really saw him. He was always busy when I organized a party, etc. They now have 2 sons, and he looks after them when she comes out with her friends. To be honest, more recently, my opinion of him has improved. He seems to be a really good dad to the kids, and they clearly adore him. They are also football mad. It took me longer to meet my significant other, Edward, but I now have, and we just got engaged. Allie and Matt both attended our engagement party. Edward actually likes football and ended up getting on really well with Matt. Later, I asked Allie if she'd be up for doing something as couples, as Edward and Matt got on so well. She was non-committal. A few weeks later, I tried to arrange something, and she accepted for herself, but Matt was busy. I explained I wanted to do something with the 4 of us when he was free, but she kept stalling. I pushed it. Maybe I shouldn't have, and she said it wasn't a good idea because he and I didn't really get along. I said it was okay. I changed my opinion more recently, and Edward likes him. She looked surprised and then awkwardly let me know it was because he didn't really like me. She thought I knew. I didn't, and I was upset. This was news to me. I asked her why. She was embarrassed, but said he found me judgmental and too much. I don't even know what that means. A few other examples as well. I was hurt, and I told her I had assumed she kept us apart because I didn't like him, not the reverse. She said that we didn't get on, so what difference did it make? I'm beyond hurt and did react badly, and I told her some honest truths about him. I regret this now, and I tried to apologize, but she won't return my calls. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Brutally honest is always code for excuse to be a jerk. And now you're upset that your very own behavior got flipped on you? And you doubled down when told so? Maybe this is the time for some honest self-reflection. Let me get this straight. You said a bunch of incredibly rude things to someone's new partner, then one day decided you like them actually, and didn't realize that everything you've ever done to them caused them to form an opinion of you. My girl, every person who is not you in the world has a mind of their own and exists in the world outside of how they relate to your life. They all have deep inner worlds just as complex as your own. Not everything is about you. Oh, and you're the jerk. You're the jerk. You can be honest with friends, tactfully, not brutally. You can date a person and keep your own separate interests, but still find that person interesting. How can you be surprised that someone you didn't like for years is returning your vibe? Am I the jerk for laughing at my girlfriend when she suggested I should offer to pay the bill for her family? I'm 23, male. My girlfriend, who's 21, and I have been together for a year and a half. Her family is super sweet, and I get along great with them. Now, my girlfriend's dad is pretty well off. Every time I've gone out to dinner with her family, he always foots the bill. Her family has been great to me. They always welcome me into their home. I went on a vacation with them back in winter. Her parents paid for our hotel for the entire week. Her dad gave her money for food. Granted, it was for her, her brother, and myself. I also only paid half of the flight because my girlfriend offered to pay for the other half. The only thing I really had to pay for is food a couple of days out of the trip, which my girlfriend pitched in and helped me with too. This past weekend, my girlfriend, myself, her younger brother, and her dad went out for brunch. I was spending the weekend with her anyway, so she invited me to join them. Before we left, her and I were talking, and she mentioned how maybe I should offer to pay for brunch, as in all 4 of us. She assured me that her dad would 1000% refuse to let me pay, but he would probably really appreciate and respect me for offering. Now, here's where I may sound like the jerk, but I honestly laughed at her suggesting this. I told her I would offer to cover her and my portion of the bill, but to expect me to offer to cover the entire bill is obscured. Sure, I work a full-time job and all of that, but I have my own bills and stuff to worry about too, and she wants me to offer to pay a $150 brunch? She told me that if her dad accepted, which she 100% guaranteed that he wouldn't, that she would send me half for the bill. I continued to laugh and told her I'm not doing that. I'll offer to pay for our half and that's it. I asked her if the roles were reversed, if she would offer to pay the bill for my family. 8 of us in total, including my girlfriend. She said that's completely different. That's 8 people, not 4. We both have very different upbringings. In terms of the situation I mentioned about paying the bill, she grew up with a decently well-off family where they would constantly argue on who would pay the bill because everyone in her family would always offer out of courtesy. I grew up very differently, as I come from a family that was not financially well off. If someone offered to pay the bill, you just sit back and let them do it. When we went to brunch, I offered to cover both her and my portion of the bill. Her dad immediately refused and covered the whole bill. She gave me a "I told you so" look. She thinks I was a jerk for how I reacted to the situation and says I should have trusted her. She told me she needs some space because my reaction to the whole situation is kind of a turnoff to her and she needs to think about things. Am I the jerk? You weren't obligated to offer, but yeah, you're the jerk for not having any modicum of courtesy, given how much her father has treated you. Do you have no shame or self-respect? And your girlfriend was right that he wouldn't let you pay. There's no risk to your finances since she offered to pay half if she was wrong. You sound like a leech, a selfish one too. Don't be surprised if your girlfriend's attitude towards you is seriously damaged by this. Yeah, OP shouldn't accept stuff if he isn't planning to reciprocate. That's not something differentiating between being brought up poor or rich. It's called human decency. You're the jerk. Your girlfriend wants you to show her dad you're not a freeloading mooch. You apparently think that doing so is laughably ridiculous. Sounds like the two of you come from wildly different cultures, but open mockery followed by refusing to understand where she, and by extension her family, are coming from is not a good sign. You're the jerk. It's common courtesy to pay back the favor of at least offering to pay the bill once in a while, since you can afford to. Your girlfriend's parents seem like generous and overall great people. You'd be doing yourself a disservice by not nurturing that relationship. The fact that they are well off doesn't mean that their generosity should be taken for granted, and it seems you're doing just that. Am I the jerk for wanting more to be done about my brother stealing $400 from me? My brother just stole $400 from me and basically nothing's being done about it. I work as a server, so I bring home cash from tips. One of my classes went on a trip that cost $900, so I stopped going to the bank while I paid for the trip, and it just became a habit, so most of my money has been just sitting in my room on my desk. Friday afternoon, I went to grab some money to repay one of my brothers for something he bought. There was only around $150 left. I know for a fact that after the trip, I had about $600 to $700. I counted it before and after I left. Someone obviously stole the money. I started searching around my room to see if anything else had been taken. Nothing. It was just the money. The money was basically in plain sight, which wasn't the smartest idea, but I never thought my siblings would steal it, so it wasn't a problem. I asked family if they knew anything about it. They didn't. A few hours later, 2 of them tell me they think it was the youngest. I'll call him Caleb. Caleb is 14. He obviously doesn't have a job right now. He worked at a haunted house for about a month and a half for $10 a day, and he only worked 3 to 4 days a week. It wasn't that much in total. When he finally got paid, he spent all of the money within a week or 2. Yesterday, after talking to my other brothers, we decided to do something about our suspicions and search his room. We found $217 in Caleb's jacket pocket. The money was obviously mine, because there's no way he would have gotten that much cash. We waited for our dad to get home to talk to him about it. My dad instantly confronted him about it, and Caleb obviously tried denying it at first, saying that he just found it. My dad mentioned we found $217. He broke, admitted to stealing it from me. He can't pay me back for what he's already spent, so my dad thinks that he should just pay me back with chores. I'm kind of mad that not much is being done about this other than him getting a few extra chores. My parents just don't seem to care. That money was my college money, and I really need it since I leave for college in a few months. My friends are saying go to the police about it. My coworkers are saying that chores aren't enough to pay me back or learn the lesson that stealing isn't okay. He's stolen from people before, but he never learns from it. I think more should be done about this, but my parents think I'm going overboard and that just doing my chores is enough. They're acting like I'm crazy for wanting my brother to actually get in trouble for this, but maybe I'm just overly mad because it was my money. Not the jerk. Your parents need to immediately pay you back with actual cash money. He can then pay them back with chores if that's what they think is appropriate. Not the jerk. He should get a job and hand you every paycheck until you're fully paid back. He can go cut lawns or something. Not the jerk. Your parents should replace it. While you could go to the cops, it isn't going to help. Fact of the matter is, they're not going to be able to do anything short of charging him, which doesn't replace the money. Bottom line, demand your parents replace the money. Their kid, their problem. Karen demands the government provide for her family. I'm female 27, and my friend, who's also female 27, we'll call her Sarah, and her husband decided to have a baby in 2020. They were both unemployed at the time because of lockdown. Ever since the baby arrived, when the friendship groups get together, all Sarah does is dominate the conversation about her money woes. She is now a stay-at-home mom, and her husband's small business collapsed during lockdown, and he's never worked since as he can't find a job in his niche field. The friend group has always been supportive of her and suggested extra government support she can apply for, and have also suggested her husband look for work outside of his field for the time being, but she never seems to listen and only wants to vent. Yesterday, she told the friend group that she and her husband had been secretly trying for another baby, and she was now pregnant. Shortly after the news, Sarah once again started to complain about money. She was talking about how her kid is sleeping on a mattress on the floor because she outgrew her crib, but they can't afford to buy another bed for her right now. She was ranting that the government should give more financial support to unemployed parents. Sarah then pointed out that I was being quiet, and I told her that if I was being honest, she put herself in a worse financial position by planning another baby, and it's not the government's responsibility to provide for her family, especially considering her husband has been unemployed for more than 2 years now. She cried, left, and now my friends are all saying I should apologize. You're the jerk. You have absolutely no right to decide who should and who shouldn't be having kids. I hope her and the whole friend group ghost your judgmental self, because I know I would. Her and her husband are the only ones who get to decide if they want to have more kids or not, and she's right about the government stepping in and doing what it's there to do. It's there to serve the people, especially those who need help. Why is it that the people like yourself who are so high and mighty and don't even need financial help at all are the quickest to judge those who do? You're what's wrong with this country, and I'm so glad we have someone in office who disagrees with your outdated ways of thinking. I also hope that you are in the exact same position she is one day and that you can't get the help that you need. You're the jerk. I'm getting major conservative vibes from you. If you come to Reddit and expect us to support your insulting of those who are battling socio-economic struggles, you're in the wrong place. If it were up to me, there would be a hard limit on how much money anyone can legally make. Then the excess would be used for people like your friend who need it. Why are some people making $100 million a year while others can't afford to feed their kids? Because we have a broken system that doesn't work. Yes, you're a major jerk, and your friend did not at all deserve your mistreatment. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her friend? Please let us know. I think you're the jerk, Reddit boy, for reading these stories and comments that just make my blood boil. But they're very entertaining though, that's for sure. Am I the jerk for telling my sister she was never a scapegoat? I, 20 female, have an older sister, Jen, who's 28, and a younger sister, Chloe, who's 17. Jen made our lives horrible growing up. She was rude, reckless, a liar, a thief, everything. She refused to go to therapy and fought our mom every step of the way. None of us could have nice things because Jen would ruin them. She got into a screaming match with Chloe when she was 11 and Jen was 22. There's so much more she's done, but it's very personal. She was a bad person, full stop. When she was 24, she met her current boyfriend, who's a literal godsend. Jen finally went to therapy, got a degree, and has a job. She's not perfect, but I can acknowledge the effort as much as I dislike her. Over the past few months, she's been making an effort to reconnect with the family. Chloe is full no contact, but me and Mom have been seeing her. I feel like she's been lying to her therapist because she's been told that she was the scapegoat, I was the invisible kid, and Chloe was the golden child. This couldn't be any further from the truth. I will admit, at the height of Jen's spiral, Mom did assume everything bad was caused by Jen, but that was because it had been years of the same destructive pattern of behavior. Like, yes, Jen, you're an alcoholic. Of course she's going to assume it was you who stole her booze. Or assuming she got fired from her job due to her attitude, which is why she got fired from every job beforehand. Or assuming she was being brought home by the police because she regularly breaks the law. This was never Mom being malicious, but when that's what you've come to expect over nearly 10 years, you're going to make a snap judgment. Jen and her fiancé, Luke, met with me to have coffee, and she brought this up, and I'll admit, I laughed in her face. She asked what was wrong, and I said, "Scapegoat? Seriously? Jen, I'm glad you're getting better, but you were a jerk growing up." She got really upset and said she was trying to reach out. I said I appreciated it, but she has to acknowledge how much hurt she caused everyone. She ended up storming out and sent me a text saying she's not going to be disrespected like that, and that it took years for her to realize the family's dynamic. Am I the jerk here? Edit. Some people have asked me how I know Jen is lying and why I was so dismissive of her. Here's why. Her assessment of her siblings' dynamic, Golden, Invisible, and Scapegoat, do not line up at all. I'm apparently the invisible kid, which could not be further from the truth. The same goes with Chloe, who Jen labeled the golden child. I'm looking at examples and traits of all three syndromes, and none of them line up. I also want to make it clear that Jen assigned these labels to us, not her therapist. I've learned that responsible therapists don't use terms like these, so my best guess is that Jen came up with all of this herself whilst we were meeting, or her therapist reinforced it. Either way, Jen came up with this alignment, which makes me skeptical of her. Not the jerk, but it sounds like you could also benefit from therapy. You don't want to hold on to all of this anger for your sister forever, especially if she's trying to better herself. You'll just come off bitter. Maybe keep contact to a minimum for now too. Is she getting better though? It seems that the sister is delusional. Instead of taking accountability for what she did, she came up with an alternative reality of what really happened. It's easy to get better when your excuse is that you were mistreated and not that you were just a bad person. Not the jerk. Your words were harsh, but they sound like they're spot on. And, wording aside, your point was to acknowledge her growth, but also point out that it's not okay to claim victimhood after the fact if it keeps you from actually taking responsibility for your actions. It sounds like she's made some strides, but if this turns into, "I was actually the victim," then her progress in therapy have gone sideways, and it'll become toxic again. You were right to point that out and make sure she knows you have your own memory of how this went down. It's complex, because she may legitimately have gotten the short end of the stick at times, like assumptions she had done something bad when she hadn't due to the track record of bad things she had done. She'd be best served to let it all go, rather than trying to untangle the web of when she was wronged. I hope she gets over it and continues her growth, but I don't think you were the jerk for what you said. Oh, I can't read? Bet. Many moons ago, I worked contract for a medical placement company in the employee health department of a rack and pinion steering plant. The plant was scheduled to close, but they were still hiring. It was a head scratcher for us too, and extra help was needed for drug screens on the new hires. The other duties were seeing to injuries as they occurred, setting up appointments with Doc on days he would come, flu shots, and then there was the project. Here's where the story begins. The project was a collection of every medical piece of paper in the plant, all of them, scattered in boxes stacked to the ceiling. No sense of order at all. Two of the veteran nurses would periodically adjourn down to the war room, as it was dubbed, to do whatever they did with the mess. I was enlisted to help one day and succeeded in only managing to mess up the Excel spreadsheet, named Apricot for reasons I've yet to understand, that they were using to attempt to collate this mess. On days when we were slow, if we had no patience, I'd stay at my post and read. And one of those days, the boss lady came by and decided to take umbrage at that hobby. I should add that if I was reading, everything was stocked, all other projects were done, and I'd already been yelled at for sweeping up after myself. "I'd really rather you not do that. I need you doing work. It looks bad." Okay, what else needs to be done? After she looks around at all I've done, "Nothing. You're done. Just don't read." So I said, I'm not a good sitter. Fast forward, she gets sick and a temporary boss comes in. I get assigned the project. It takes a minute, but I get it whipped into shape. First, I sorted papers into folders by name. Then I organized by dates on papers, past to recent in each file. Then I alphabetized the folders and put them in boxes. What had taken the other two nurses months on end took me a few weeks. After that, I started a new Excel spreadsheet. Data entry is one of my favorite things, and I'm fast. Name, date of birth, first date listed, last date listed, easy peasy. I was blowing through 20 to 30 boxes a day. I only took lunch and bathroom breaks. The boss comes back from sick leave, walks in and goes pale. "What happened?" "Nothing. I've been working super hard. Is it not done right?" "It's great, but it's gone." Yes, ma'am, I've made decent progress. She hem-hawed around and finally muttered, I need you to slow down. Sorry? I need you to slow down. We told them we needed at least this amount of time to complete that project, and as fast as you've gone, there won't be any work left to do. So, what else can I do? Do a box, read a book, do a box, take a nap. Just slow down. Bring your books, or several books. Just slow down. And that's how I got permission to read in my own downtime at work. Might not be the best malicious compliance story, but after 15 years, it still makes me laugh. Hibachi fun. This happened just yesterday afternoon. My wife convinced me to go to a tulip farm. Spent the time picking up tulips, paying for them, and having to stand and walk around for 3 hours for Instagram pictures is not fun. By the end of that event, we were tired and hungry. I wanted to eat somewhere fun and found a hibachi place. My kids were excited and my wife was happy with her haul. We ended up arriving at the hibachi place and led to our seats. Great service by the staff. More on that later. I forgot to mention that I had a toddler and wanted a high seat for my daughter so she can see the griddle. The staff pointed to one of the waitstaff and indicated I needed a high chair. I was 10 feet from the chair and the waitress was further away. I waved her off and grabbed the chair myself. As I returned to the table, another couple was being led to the other side of our table. Each hibachi setup set 9 to 10 people, so I stopped to let them pass. After passing, a woman turned around and said something to me, but it was noisy and I was concentrated on getting my daughter seated. As I struggled with the seatbelt, I felt a tap on my shoulder, but I sat my daughter first. After seating my daughter, I turned around and the same lady was literally inches from my face telling me a bunch of things. I giggled and told her, sorry, I don't work here. Now, I don't know why she thought I did at all. Everyone who worked there was dressed in black and white. I was wearing a t-shirt, had mud on my shoes, and my hair was tossed around like I hadn't slept in days. However, she insisted and kept raising her voice at me. Granted, it was noisy. I repeated that, I don't work here. She then got heated, yelling and getting angry, saying it was about her food allergies, and if she got sick, she would sue me. At this point, I was tired and told her, I don't care about your allergies because I don't work here. She put her finger in my face, and my wife notices, gets up, swats her hand away, and stood between this lady and I. My wife clarifies that I don't work there, turns around and sits me down, and this lady keeps raising her voice that I was rude to her. At this point, her husband was red and grabbed to sit her down. This interaction lasted for less than a minute. The staff came by and calmed everyone down and made sure everyone was seated. They asked if I wanted to be moved, but I said no. I was fine where I was, then asked the lady if she wanted to be moved, and she said no, but seemed pretty upset. The hibachi chef had noticed all of this as he rolled his cart in. He started his routine, and my wife and kids loved it. I just sat there, happy as a clam that everyone was having a great time while I would get to eat. At this point of the dinner, the hibachi chef started spraying my kids with water, which they loved, and for the adults, he would spray them with white wine from a bottle to loosen them up. When he gets to me, he gives me a really long dose and says, "You need a double. You work overtime today." I thought this was hilarious. As he went around giving all the adults a spray of wine, he gets to the lady and gives her the tiniest spray and says, "Maybe not too much for you." She giggles, but was obviously not entertained. As he does his routine, we had a good time and ate good food. My kids loved it, and to me, that was the important part. Now, after the routine, the chef started cleaning up. He tosses a clean rag and scraper near me, and without missing a beat, I yelled, "Yes, boss!" got up and started scraping off the grill. The chef started barking at me even more. I moved faster and more frantically. Then a waitstaff brings a mop and bucket, and I started mopping. Everyone was laughing. My kids were going crazy. It was hilarious to me, at the least. So to add to it, I spontaneously asked everyone to give a generous tip for the show, even though it wasn't necessary, and they did. Except for you-know-who. I was finally urged back to my chair with clapping from my family. Chef gave a handshake for being a good sport and went on his way. We finished eating and getting served dessert. We then hear talking from the corner where the couple is now arguing because she was mad at me and her husband allowed it all to happen. I really felt bad at that point and just wanted everyone to leave on a good note. I apologized about the interaction earlier because it was easy for me. I had no stake in their argument and it did seem to help. We finished eating and packed up our stuff to leave. As we were leaving, this lady was at the lobby complaining to the manager about everything. My wife stopped and chimed in. Apparently, the manager already knew, made it clear to the lady to calm down, and in an Asian accent said, "Oh, so sorry, no refund. Now you go home." The lady was getting pulled by her husband to the parking lot at that point. "Sorry, dude." Then that manager turns to us in the most New Jersey accent. "I can't believe that accent worked. I hope you guys had a great time." He proceeded to talk to my wife and kids while his staff helped me get our stuff into the car. He walked us out and gave my kids some takeaway snacks. Loved it. Overall, it was a fun day. Am I the jerk for saying that my sister made her own bed when she named her daughter like this? My sister, after years of trying to have kids, got pregnant to have my niece. When she told us the name, I explained in the best way that the name she chose was very common for an animal. An example with an American name. She wanted to call her daughter Bella, just Bella. And in my country, Bella would be extremely common for a pet. She said I was anticipating the worst and wouldn't change my mind. I gave up, but she was warned. She said I was anticipating the worst and I should change my mind. I gave up, but she was warned. Recently, my fiance was asking for a dog and I decided to adopt one. My fiance always wanted to have a dog named Bella, tribute to her childhood dog, and I even commented about it being the same name as my niece, who's 2 now. But she said that she always wanted to name one of her pets even before my sister got pregnant. Since she owns it, I didn't want to contest. We currently don't live together, but we constantly stay at each other's houses and Bella comes with her all the time. This weekend was my son's birthday and there was a party at the house, so all my siblings, parents, in-laws, and my fiance came over, including Bella, both of them. No one in my family had met her yet, not even a week after we adopted, and we introduced her. My sister became quiet. My brothers made a joke with the same names. The mood softened after a while, but when I was alone with my sister, she started saying that I was petty for choosing the same name as my niece for my dog and caused her unnecessary discomfort since I could have chosen any other name. I explained by saying that it wasn't me who chose it, but my bride. Right after that, the reason for the name. She even said that we could have chosen another name out of respect for her and her niece. I ran out of patience and ended up saying in a harsh way, she was already yelling at me and I hate being yelled at, that if she didn't want to go through that kind of discomfort, she shouldn't have put one of the most common names for a pet, and that there's going to be a dog by that name on every corner. She knows it and she chose it anyway, so she made her bed by naming her that. She left early and we're not on good terms. My parents are begging me to change the name, but it's not my dog, and my fiance won't budge, saying that she always said that Bella will be the name of her first pet to everyone. Extra. The name is Mel, the equivalent of honey in English, a nickname for Melissa mostly. In Brazil, at least, Mel is one of the most, if not the most used, name for a pet. I only know my niece with this name, but I know 10 dogs named Mel. So basically, your sister named her the local equivalent of Spot or Rover. Well, darn, that was an entirely bad choice, and the dog's name wasn't up to you, so there's that. Not the jerk. It's almost like a combo of everyone sucks here and no jerks here, because people name pets human names all the time. Bailey, Henry, Colin, even my dog's name is Olive. I don't see why this is such a big deal for all parties involved. I think you and your fiance did do it on purpose, but your sister shouldn't care so much. Am I the jerk for no longer paying my fair share after my boyfriend donated a large amount of insurance money to charity? My boyfriend, 26 male, and his brother, 29 male, had a very bad relationship. His brother was an alcoholic, and he had to pay for insurance as part of his job, and he passed from drinking and falling down the stairs. Insurance paid out $260,000 split between him and his mom. Dad abandoned them, so $130,000 each. He said he didn't want the money and wanted to donate it to a charity. We've been together for 3 years, and for 2 of those years, I've paid the majority of the expenses. I make around $90,000 a year, and he makes $35,000. He also has credit card debt from not making enough to survive on and medical debt. I pay $2,000 of our $2,600 rent, most of the food costs, so he can pay off debt. I will admit, I feel like he can do better, but with his bad upbringing and crappy family, I try to be gentle about nagging him, and he hasn't made any areas of improvement. I've worked hard to get new jobs and increase my salary, and he hasn't, which hurts, because I work a lot, 9 to 11 hours a day, while it seems like he gets to follow his passion. He teaches kids gymnastics, which doesn't pay well. I'm an engineer, and it feels like I'm doing all of the work keeping us afloat. So when he got the money, I said we should buy an apartment or use it to pay off his debt or save it or something. But he wants to donate it, and I'm really hurt because he doesn't care that by doing that, I'm forced to keep working harder and harder to support us. Especially because our rent got, legally, increased to $2,900. And so if we re-sign for this place, almost half of my money is going to rent. I tried to explain it that we need the money and he can donate a portion, but he needs to take care of our finances first, like I've been doing for years. But he's mad that I want to make use of his brother's blood money and accuses me of only seeing money when it's about doing the right thing. I feel like he only cares about doing the right thing while letting me do all of the hard stuff, like paying all the bills and taking care of real life. His brother passed almost a year ago, and he got the insurance money 6 months ago and hasn't helped out at all. I've already talked about everything I wrote above to him, and he just ignores me. Last month, I found out he donated everything to the American Cancer Society, and while it's a good cause, it doesn't help our finances. I was so angry that I'm left paying for everything so he can feel noble. I've told him he needs to start paying half the rent and food, and I'm no longer subsidizing him. We've had so many fights about this because I only buy enough food for myself, and he gets home with nothing to eat and accuses me of being selfish. He says because I make more, I should be paying what I do. But he got a lot of money, so why doesn't he pay for more things? Even his mother, who wasn't great to him, called and begged him to keep the money rather than donating it. Everyone in my life, my parents, my friends, and my sister, consider him a bum and openly ask me why I'm with him. I don't know if I can answer it positively anymore because I feel used. But am I the jerk for insisting my boyfriend pay half of everything now that he has donated all of his brother's insurance money? Do you want outside permission to dump him? Boom, done and granted. Break up with him. Not the jerk. Anyone who gets money like that and gives it away when they have actual responsibilities is no one to continue making a life with. Bail, flee, scurry, abandon ship. Save yourself, your sanity, and money. Not the jerk. Do not re-sign that lease. Tell him that if he wants to make major financial decisions on his own, then he can cover his major financial expenses on his own. Everyone sucks here. He has huge survivor's guilt, and that can be paralyzing. Been there, done that. Still kind of doing it. That being said, he has responsibilities and debt to pay off that affect more than just him. On the other hand, the fact that you're complaining about his profession and playing the martyr doesn't help things for you. I am guessing, or should I say hoping, that you knew how he mishandled money, that he was in debt, and what his job was before you moved in together. In that case, I say, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. You're the jerk. It's an inheritance, and you don't get to decide how he uses it. It's funny that when this comes up in other posts, the person, usually a dude, who is unhappy how their partner uses the money is called the jerk, but not you. It would be interesting to see how this would have played out if the genders were reversed. Having said that, this guy sounds like a bum, so you're a double jerk if you don't break up with him. Seriously, what's he bringing to the table? You're obviously intelligent. What are you getting out of this? Everyone sucks here, though primarily him. You're right that what he did with the money wasn't wise and that he should have put some of it towards some form of savings or your shared expenses. It was an opportunity and he blew it. He didn't even pay down his debts. No wonder you're resentful of this decision. But darn, you are awfully judgmental of someone working for $35,000 a year. His work teaching those kids is real work. That's almost $17 an hour and is more than a lot of us make. Someone flipping burgers for significantly less than $35,000 a year does real work too. They are not bums. Your response to anyone saying that he's a bum for making a full-time wage should be to shut that crap down, but you seem remarkably okay with hearing it. Honestly, you two don't sound compatible. You have very different financial priorities and goals, and it doesn't seem like there's trust or respect there on either side to allow you guys to work through that. You really can't be expected to ignore what he did either. It is a big deal. He has shown you who he is. Believe him. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for not returning my friend's wallet? So this guy that I hang out with has almost the exact same wallet as I do. Size, color, stitching. Just the texture of our wallets is slightly different. So anyways, we were hanging out with some friends and decided to call it a night. While I was grabbing my stuff to leave, I grabbed his wallet by mistake. I had already thrown my own wallet in my gym bag I kept with a change of clothes because I go over straight after work. I got all the way home without realizing it. I lived 20 minutes away and it was raining at 11 o'clock at night. So I get a phone call maybe 5 minutes after I get home. "Hey man, do you have my wallet?" Check my pocket and sure enough it's there. Tell him I'm sorry that I have it. "Well, I need you to drive it back to me." He doesn't know this, but I have to be at work at 8 in the morning and leave at 12 the next morning, but I didn't say this. I just asked him if I can bring it to him early tomorrow. I know I messed up. "No, bud, you messed up. I work early in the morning and I want to go out, so I need my wallet. You gotta bring it to me, man. You messed up. You've gotta make it right." "Dude, it's raining and late. And I don't care, man. That's my property." "Well, of course, but we're friends and you should be able to trust me." "That's not the issue. That's my property and you can't keep it. If you don't bring me my wallet, you're no longer allowed at my house." "Oh? Well, I guess I'm no longer allowed at your house then. And you can come get your wallet tonight if you really want to go out so badly this late. Otherwise, you can wait until the morning before I go to work." And he decided to come get it. I ended up giving him $20 as well since he drove out. I guess we aren't friends anymore. Am I the jerk? Edit. Someone said to edit this post and talk about the visual impairment of the rain. It was hard to see at points in time. I don't know what you want me to say. It's Florida, April, and if you live in Florida, you know how chaotic the weather can be here. Sunny one spot, pouring the next. A drizzle here and more pouring. So like that, except dark, I guess. Also, if you say he could have gotten hurt coming to get his wallet in the rain, but call me a jerk for not wanting to do the same to either of us, then you're kind of the jerk. You're the jerk. It was your mistake because you took your friend's wallet and didn't make right by it. How hard is this? Wouldn't want to be friends with you either. You're the jerk. How is this even a question? You messed up, took someone's wallet, credit cards, and identification, then asked him to deal with it because it's raining and you need to sleep? Yeah, you're a big jerk. Am I the jerk for going into my sister's house without permission? I, female 32, have a younger sister who's 19 that has a set of twins who are both 1. She got pregnant unexpectedly in high school, and me and my parents have been very supportive of her. My husband owns a townhome complex that he rents out, and we decided to let her live in one of them rent-free since she's in college and we want her to focus on that. The only rule I had for her was to not allow her baby daddy, who's 23, to move in. The guy's pretty much bad news and has a record, and every time he comes into my sister's life, he sets her back, mentally and academically, and way more stuff. My husband drives past these homes every day, and he always sees my sister's baby daddy's car in the driveway. At first, I thought he was just visiting or babysitting, but my husband left work at 11 p.m. one night, and he told me he had seen the car there still. So my suspicion was he was staying there. I asked my sister first, and she lied to me and said he's never there, which is a lie because his car is there daily. My sister went out of town, and this is where I might be wrong, but I just needed to see for myself. So I used the master key and went into the house, and it's pretty clear that he's living there. Almost all of his stuff was there, and I was honestly furious because that was the only rule I gave her, and we're losing money by helping her. I waited for her to come home, and I confronted her about it, and of course it turned into a screaming match, and she was mad I went into her home without permission. I told her she needs to start paying rent or I'll be evicting her. My mom is on her side and said it was unnecessary that I went into her home when she wasn't there, and that I would be the jerk if I start demanding rent or evict her since I was once her age and I dated horrible dudes too. So, am I the jerk? Edit. No, she does not have a lease for the townhouse since she's not paying anything there. If she were to start paying rent, she would be put on the lease. The only thing that she pays for is cable and electricity. Everything else we pay for. The townhouse is under the ownership of husband's company. Second edit. The argument that some of you guys are making that she's a tenant and I broke rental agreement, I'm gonna repeat myself. She does not have a lease or rental agreement. Technically, the place is still my husband's. She hasn't paid any sort of rent towards the house. She never paid any security deposit. She's legally just a person that stays on our property. The most rights she would potentially have is squatter's rights. Other than that, no. How do you guys think we have spare keys to get in? If she was a traditional renter, we wouldn't have access to a spare like that. Again, my sister has no binding to the property. It's in my husband's name. He's the sole owner of that property. Her ownership to the house is equivalent to someone staying at a hotel for free. Not the jerk. She knew the rules, she broke them. She can pay her way or live by the rules. It's a simple concept, really. Not the jerk. Sounds like she's used to no consequences. Lied to your face. It's not her house if she doesn't pay rent or a mortgage. Legally, you were in the wrong, and so was she, but morally, you're not the jerk. You set one rule in return for repeatedly gifting her a large amount of money each month. It's obvious that she thinks she can do whatever she wants without any consequences, so I would stay the process of evicting her. If your mom is so concerned, she can live with your mom, or your mom can pay for her to rent somewhere else. But I would get her out of that house because she seems like the type to start mistreating it because she's not getting what she wants. And this is why you never let someone you're related to move into a house that you own. It's just asking for trouble. New neighbors have 9 people crammed into a 2-bedroom apartment and are extremely loud all of the time. I've lived in my apartment for almost 2 years, and my experience has been unproblematic so far. I live in the second to last unit, and our old neighbors in the last unit moved out about 2 months ago. We got new neighbors in that unit 3 days ago. For those 3 days, it's been rough. There are at least 5 kids and 4 adults living in the unit. The kids and adults yell almost constantly. Kids are loud, but that doesn't even bother me the most because it can be tuned out. What's bothering me is that the adults have had at least 2 extra vehicles in the parking area. Each unit gets 2 spaces, unassigned, and my partner and I utilize both of ours. And they play loud music for hours while smoking and drinking in their running cars. In the day, they do the same, and the kids run around all the parked vehicles. It's painful to see the alerts on my doorbell cam when the kids are playing around the vehicles because I bought a new vehicle just last week, so I'm still in the phase where I'm hyper aware of making sure it's taken care of cosmetically and mechanically. On day 2 of new neighbors, one of the kids set my car alarm off somehow. I still can't figure it out, but a scooter was involved. My dilemma is, what do I do? I've already asked one of the adults nicely if they could maybe avoid the kids playing tag with vehicles, but shortly after is when my alarm went off. I don't want to complain to management because the neighbors would obviously know it was me, as I'm the only next door neighbor aside from the building across from us. Maybe I'm being dramatic or paranoid, I don't know, man. I really feel like a Karen, but this crap is stressful for me considering I haven't had to worry about this crap since I've moved in. I doubt the management rented to 9 people. Let them know. Karen demands custody of my daughter. I, 30 female, have been taking care of my niece, who's now 7 years old, for the past 5 years, after my sister, who's 32, left her at my doorstep and disappeared. My sister was going through a difficult time with her mental health, and she was unable to provide a stable environment for her daughter. At the time, I didn't hesitate to take my niece in and provide her with a loving and secure home. When my sister left her daughter with me, she didn't leave any contact information, and we had no way of reaching her. We searched for her, but we couldn't find any leads. I was left with no choice but to take full custody of my niece, and I've been her primary caregiver ever since. During the past 5 years, I've watched my niece grow into an amazing kid. I provided her with a stable and secure environment, and I've been there for her during all of the milestones. I've taken her to school, helped her with her homework, taken her to doctor's appointments, and celebrated her birthdays with her. Recently, my sister has reached out to me, and she informed me that she's doing better with her mental health now and wants her daughter back. Although I'm happy that my sister's doing better, I'm not ready to give up custody of my niece. My niece has become a big part of my life, and I love her like she's my own kid. My sister has been threatening to take legal action against me if I don't give her daughter back to her. However, I'm not afraid. My best friend is a lawyer who specializes in custody cases, and I'm prepared to fight for my niece's best interests. I understand that my sister is the biological mother of my niece, but I feel like I'm the only mother figure she's ever known for the past 5 years. I'm torn between my love for my niece and my loyalty to my sister. Am I the jerk for refusing to give her back to my sister? Not the jerk. You're the only mother she's ever known. Fight this with every ounce of strength and every penny you have. Well done, and good luck. If your sister really wants to come back in and build a relationship, she has to understand that she's a stranger to this kid. How about staying overnight to visit you, having park playdates, even just going to a cafe together for lunch? Not the jerk, and in fact, you're amazing for stepping up as a parent. Not the jerk. Has your sister done anything to prove she's better? Honestly, even if she has, you stepped up and took care of her kid. You have effectively become her mother because it's not like she has many memories of her birth mother. Do what's best for your niece, and what's best never involves being moved out of a loving home into an unknown environment. You're the jerk. That is her kid. Why are you playing games with her like that? My mom tried the same stuff with my babies when I had her watch them for a while when I had to take care of some other things. Then when it was time to get my kids back, she trying to say that I'm not fit to be a mother and she was going to keep them. No way. These are my kids and I'm their mother. She trying to say because I got locked up for a quick minute that I'm not a good mom. I was working the streets trying to keep food on the table for my babies. That's why I got locked up. Eventually, the authorities did take them away because they said my place was not clean enough. They literally wanted to be spotless, no crumbs anywhere, smelling like pine sol. That's not how normal people live. But I at least know that my jerk mom was not the one who got them in the end. I'm pregnant now with my third, and this time it will be different. Sure it will, baby mama. Sure it will. I lost it on my brother-in-law for telling my son to be the man of the house. My husband, Dan, grew up in a single-parent household. His dad passed when he was young. His older brother, Martin, was definitely made to act like a parent and became the man of the house. Together, Dan and I have 3 kids, Sydney, who's 12, Gabe, who's 10, and Charlotte, who's 3. Unfortunately, Dan passed 3 months ago. It's been a terrible struggle trying to balance my grief, my kids, on top of the rest of my responsibilities. I have a great support system, so I've been cognizant to make sure my babies still have a childhood. I always said I wouldn't do what my mother-in-law did. Recently, I was having a bit of a tough time. Charlotte was sick, Sydney is in about a million activities, and the housework was piling up. Martin's wife, Rachel, offered to come by and help me out. She generously cleaned the house and looked after Charlotte while I ran Sydney to her activities. When I arrived back home, I found Martin and Gabe in the kitchen. Martin was telling him that it shouldn't have gotten to this stressful point and he should be helping me more. He told him that he was the man of the house and it was up to him to step up. I cut in and told Gabe not to listen to his uncle, that he's just a kid and it's not his job to take over for his father. Rather, it's his job to play, go to school, and just be a kid. I sent him to go play. I tore into Martin. I asked him how dare he say that to my son. I said he may have been treated like this, but he will not do the same to my son. I said if he pulled crap like that again, he'd never see my kids again. Martin told me I was being ungrateful. He was only trying to help. He said more than anything, he was defending his wife as it's not her job to help me. I reminded him I never asked Rachel for help. She offered. Martin said she wouldn't have if I wasn't complaining about how hard my life is. Ever since, Dan's family have been telling me what a jerk I am. They say this is all Martin knows and I was way too harsh on him, especially threatening to cut him off. They told me I need to get my stuff together. My mother-in-law especially thinks I need to suck it up and expect my kids, not just Gabe, but Sydney too, to help me with Charlotte. I told her off, and that only made it worse. Everyone is accusing me of alienating Dan's family, which I'm not trying to do. Am I the jerk? Edit to clarify. My kids do have chores and help around the house. The work in question was things that are out of their age bracket and were my responsibility. Thus why I was falling behind, considering I also have to take care of the kids, drive them places, and do more things that are not age appropriate or their job. Not the jerk. You take those healthy boundaries for your kids and you defend them with your life. It's something your brother-in-law unfortunately hasn't experienced, and that's not his fault, but he is about to learn. We break these cycles. We don't perpetuate them. Not the jerk. You talking to Rachel is called venting. Martin was deflecting to remove the light from his mistake. There are some things the kids could do to help. Picking up their toys, putting dishes in the sink or away, small things, run a vacuum. It teaches life skills. I get why you blew up at what he said. Kids don't need to be a man of the house. Add to that you're trying to juggle 3 kids, keep the home afloat, and probably haven't gotten to grieve properly. Not the jerk. Man of the house is such a stupid idea. It's honestly laughable. Fortunately, we live in the modern age where, to be honest, we don't need to have a man in the house at all. Most men now don't even know how to do traditional manly things like work on cars or do house repairs. All they want to do these days is play video games and eat Cheetos. This is why I stopped dating them a long time ago, and most of my friends have too. You're the jerk. Your brother-in-law is right. Right now, your son is the man of the house, no matter how much you may dislike that wording. He has 2 sisters and a mother who are going to be depending on him. He won't have the option to goof off and be a typical lazy entitled teen. He's going to need to mature quickly and become the man that you all need him to be. This is what I had to do growing up. My father walked out on us when I was only 9, but I had younger siblings who looked up to me. Sadly, I can tell by the way you're explaining this whole thing that he's really going to struggle growing up in this home. Just please get him in sports if he's not already. Without learning to compete, young men don't stand a chance. And since you seem to think your brother-in-law doesn't know what he's talking about, please try to find a smart man with good morals who can guide your son down the right path. Just as there are things only a mother can teach her daughter, there are things that only a father can teach his son. This used to be common knowledge, but sadly in our current climate, common knowledge isn't so common anymore. Not the jerk. And maybe it's best we go ahead and cut off Dad's family, at least until you figure out how your life will be moving forward. You owe nothing to them, so go ahead and hit that block button and figure out your family. Forget them. Refuse to accommodate my disability? Okay then. Let me give a little backstory first. I started working at Walmart before lockdown happened as a full-time apparel employee. I happen to have grand mal epilepsy that started in my mid-20s, around 2015. I'm also quite understanding of other people's disabilities and often try to work with them, since I can relate to having issues. Example, I use hand gestures and/or writing for deaf coworkers. This helps with basic communication that most hearing people don't bother with, and it's normally appreciated that I do this. I got to stay in that exact same position throughout 2020 and part of 2021. Naturally, I had to still go to work as an essential employee, deal with idiots, and worry about both of my parents who also work in retail. I managed to get myself promoted to the digital shopping department by transferring stores and pointing out certain key skills I have that are really useful in retail in 2021. I had politely asked for the minimal requirements from my department manager of 1. Being able to take medication at work, and 2. Not having to bring orders out to cars because I lack what's known as an aura. Basically summed up here, I can't sense seizures coming. Though I don't have them very often due to medication, a grand mal plus a busy parking lot at work seems like a bad idea. My department manager agreed to this condition as long as I did other work to help out with the digital team instead, which was completely reasonable to ask for in my opinion. So, as per the request, for a lot of closing shifts I'd work, I'd take up phone duty, pre-set up the orders to go out, and/or do returns for the department. The issue here was that the personal department person, she kept forgetting about my condition repeatedly over the next year. This was despite me bringing in medical notes from my neurologist for my file, pointing this out more than once on why I shouldn't be scheduled solo and having the department manager talk to her. After over a year, she scheduled me completely solo for a closing, which I noticed and texted my department lead about. I did the official suggestion of hers, despite my thoughts that corporate Walmart was likely even dumber than her on basic disabilities. I only asked for the exact same things I asked my department manager for, both very, very logical and minimal accommodation requests. As I suspected, Walmart's Sedgwick said, "We can't do this unless you change departments." All departments suggested either wouldn't work due to time and/or location, or they were back at the same level as apparel, which would lower my position and pay. Sedgwick put me on an automatically placed LOA after a few days without my permission. This was to allow me to figure out what I should do over the next 4 months. I called up and asked the Walmart Benefit Center about this. As of late 2019, Walmart signed all of their employees up for a free to the employees short-term disability insurance without officially telling them. I filed to get this insurance to pay for my entire LOA and was given the short-term disability payments, with back pay for exactly when they put me on leave. I'd rather have my paycheck and insurance stick around for a while, despite Walmart and Sedgwick being idiotic. I quit Walmart after having gotten holiday employment with Target for 2 months at that point. Am I the jerk for buying all of the red Gatorade at the store, even though a mom wanted some for her kids? I'm a big fan of Gatorade, and I have a specific reason for buying it. I have low blood sugar and dehydration issues, and my doctor recommended that I drink Gatorade to help keep my electrolytes in balance. However, I'm also neurodivergent, and it's hard for me to change things up and try new flavors, so I only buy the red kind as it's the only one I like. Yesterday I went to the grocery store on their stock day and I saw that they had a fresh shipment of Gatorade. I was so happy because I've been running low at home. I grabbed the bottles of the red flavor and put them in my cart. As I was walking away, a mom with 2 kids approached me and asked if I could spare a few bottles of the red Gatorade. She explained that it was her kids' favorite color and that they were out of stock at their local store. I felt bad for her, but I explained that I needed the Gatorade for my own health reasons and that I couldn't spare any. The mom got really upset and started to yell at me, saying that I was being selfish and that I should think about others. I tried to explain my situation again, but she wouldn't listen and kept telling me I could just take the blue Gatorade instead. I just started to ignore her after a while, but eventually she stormed off. Now I'm wondering if I was in the wrong. Should I have just given her some of the Gatorade, even though I needed it for my own health? Or was I justified in keeping it all for myself? Am I the jerk? Edit. I should clarify since this is coming up in the comments. I didn't really want to go into specifics, but here we go. No, my doctor did not recommend specifically red Gatorade for this issue. He recommended Gatorade. The red Gatorade is needed because I deal with OCD and have issues with change to my routine and trying new things. It can be debilitating to deal with panic attacks induced by such a small problem and can remove my focus from my process of treating the bigger problems with my OCD. So I've chosen, at the advice of a therapist, to allow myself to stick to this small routine and avoid further disruption during my process of getting better. I wish my food aversion was something I could just turn off, but I can't, and it's a process to work through these things for me. I hope people in the comments can understand that. I'm not trying to intentionally be a jerk and take things from other people. I just have a fear of not being able to keep the little things in my routine, and that feeling trumps a lot of things for me. If you don't struggle with OCD, be grateful. You're the jerk. OP states in the comments and main post that the drinks were just restocked and also that he was taking literally all of them. Doesn't matter if it's Gatorade, insulin, or toilet paper. Hoarding all of the supply when you, 1, clearly have enough for a while, and 2, there's someone else in the store wanting to buy some, makes you a jerk. The kid could be neurodivergent also, you don't know. And I guarantee you if you arrived and this mom did the same thing and took literally all of your special drink as soon as it was restocked, you would be infuriated. If you really can only do red and need to bulk order it, work with the store manager or order online. Often you can get up to a pallet for a lower price than on the shelves just by scheduling a special order. I'll probably get a lot of hate for this, but you're the jerk. You are indeed selfish for buying a store out of its entire stock of a product on stock day because that means they will be out of that product for anyone who comes to buy it until they restock. That lady shouldn't have yelled at you, obviously, but I do understand her frustration. Just a suggestion, but if your need is really that great, you need to speak to the store manager because they'd likely be happy to order extra of that flavor for you. Am I the jerk for suing my mother and her husband over child support payments? I have a terrible dog allergy, and during my childhood and teenage years, my mother decided it would be smart to not only get one, but 4. Through that, she managed to completely isolate me from my family, and I couldn't leave my room whenever I was home since the dogs were allowed everywhere and I couldn't stay in the room with them without being unable to breathe and constantly sneezing. I lived like that for 4 years before I had enough and moved on to my university campus. My mother fought for me to stay, not because of me, but because she would miss my dad's child support payments since she was legally required to give them to me now. Our relationship became pretty frosty, but at one point we sat down and had a conversation, and I thought things were now okay. She continues to pay me monthly, and I have a decent job, so I managed to find a place of my own. Well, over the last few months, I found out my mother wasn't paying the full support to me. It was about 200 euros less than it should be, which she kept. I confronted her and told her that I need the money for uni and my apartment, but she claimed what she's already paying me is more than enough and that I need to get my spending habits under control. I told her I can't work full-time because of my degree, but she simply didn't care. Since that money legally belongs to me, I've decided to talk to a lawyer about suing her for the amount she owes me and the amount that she kept to herself all my life. I went through with it, and we are now settling this through court. My mom's husband begged me to drop it and said he would pay me around 1,000 euros as compensation and that I need to think about the fact that they still have to pay off their house, that the dogs need food, that he has to support my sisters, etc. Even my dad told me I was being too harsh on my mother. I simply don't care about that woman who's treated me like this for my whole life. Am I the jerk? Edit. I have 3 sisters and I'm the oldest brother. The only thing I'm concerned about is them losing in the process because I know I have to go no contact once this is settled. She's already been calling me nonstop and I blocked her number, and she's been using my sister to contact me. She's a really good manipulator, so I'm really worried and wondering if this is all worth it. As to some of the questions I keep seeing, my sisters are 18, 12, and 9. The oldest is my stepsister, daughter of my mom's new husband. The other 2 are my half-siblings. They mean the world to me. I feel very protective of them, and I did everything I could in my situation to be a good brother to them. At the moment, I'm also trying to support my oldest younger sister with her wish to move out. She might move in with me. I hope I can keep contact through them in secret or through my grandma. I'm very scared of losing my youngest sister. To the Germans in the comments, I don't get that benefit. My parents are both really well off, and I tried multiple times explaining my situation. I don't get anything that would support me. I applied for this other benefit, and I'm waiting for the result of that. I've been working since I was 16, and before moving out, my mom did take part of my money for rent, so there is a pattern. My mom managed the child support, and my dad is a very let's just keep it the way it's always been type of guy. So he just kept paying my mom and trusted her to give it to me, even when I told him I don't get anything. I'm very happy with the rational comments I'm receiving because I catch myself still trying to excuse her behavior. I love my parents dearly. I love my family. I don't want to be in this situation, but at the same time, I don't see what else I can do. Not the jerk. I find it comical that you were told to get your spending under control by the people who are stealing your money to be able to afford dog food for the dogs that are the reason you had to move in the first place. Not the jerk. Let's see. She was knowingly endangering and confining you with her dogs and then stealing from you. Go on with full force. Not the jerk. What your mom's husband and dad expect from you is being the bigger person. But ask yourself, is your mom ever going to make it up to you? Will she be thankful to you for letting it drop? Is your relationship with your mom even worth it to you anymore? I mean, I absolutely love my dog. I would quit a relationship over my dog. But getting a dog when your kid is allergic? What nonsense is that? No judgment. I'm confused how someone over 18 is supposed to be getting child support, mandatory from a parent. OP. The law here states that parents have to pay child support until I either finish an internship and have a full-time job or when I finish my first university degree. Since I am in uni and under 25, they still have to pay. Am I the jerk for not babysitting at the cookout? I, 27 male, was at a backyard cookout with some friends and coworkers. So the ages were late 20s to early 40s. It was a family-friendly event, so people brought their kids. They were playing in the yard while most of the adults hung out in the backyard deck. And like always, the parents saw other adults in the area and decided to just walk away and go inside. I don't know why this is a thing a lot of parents tend to do. Parents, why do you just walk away at outings and expect others to watch your kids for you? I don't get it. I could see if it were your immediate family, but even then, I would warn someone that I was not going to be watching them. It was near the end of the night, so some people were gone. It was also getting dark and colder, so people were inside. The kids were still running around the play area. I decided to go home. I went inside and said goodbye to the host. Then I got in my car out front and was on my phone for a minute, and someone angrily walked up and asked me why I left the backyard. They said I was back there and they were counting on me to watch the kids. Note that this was never even said to me. They just went inside and said nothing. I was on the deck, and at no point in the night was I ever paying attention to them. Nothing dangerous happened. The parents just saw me walk into my car and freaked out. I told her it's not my job to watch your kids, but I probably would have stuck around if I were asked. I was just sitting on the deck, drinking and minding my own business. I had already been going back and forth from outside to socialize the whole night like everyone else. Not sure why I was the one singled out. There were times when another person happened to be outside and I was inside. Did they assume we were taking shifts? I don't get the mentality of parents, but maybe I'm the jerk here. Edit. I don't think it's clear, so I'll clarify. I had no knowledge of being on kid duty. The backyard is large and open and leads into the forest. I was on the small deck by the house. At no point in the night was I watching or listening for them. The whole night I was periodically going inside and outside freely. Never considered them because I assumed the responsible parents were keeping an eye out. Dude, you're definitely not the jerk. You're not a babysitter. You should not be held in any position to watch their kids. Not the jerk. It took me a while to figure out none of the kids were even yours because their reaction makes no sense at all. Just assuming someone else is watching your kids for you is pretty ridiculous. Am I the jerk for calling out a family member for giving fake gifts? For graduation 3 years ago, my uncle, 53 male, gave me, 25 female, a $100 gift card. But when I went to use it, the teller said that there was only $6 left on the card. I assumed it was a mistake and didn't say anything to him. For Christmas 2 years ago, he gave me a $50 gift card, which was $25 over what the limit was per person. When I went to use it, the teller said it had never been activated. I again didn't say anything, but I thought it was odd that it happened twice. Last year, I finished grad school, and my uncle loudly announced to everyone at my party that I should get an email with a digital gift card and that it should help me pay for my new furnishings when I move. I checked my email that night and had nothing in my inbox or spam. I waited a few days, then texted him and mentioned I didn't get an email, just to make sure he had used the correct email address. He never responded. I finally hit the limit this Christmas when he handed me a $100 Visa gift card and announced that he had been doing well at work and wanted to be generous. I thanked him and checked the balance later and saw there was only around $3 on the card. The next day, when my grandma said she was going to the mall, I said I would go too to use the gift card. I tried to use it with her standing next to me, and when the teller said there were insufficient funds, she was shocked. I logged into the website where you can check the balance and showed her that the card had been spent months ago and how little remained. She seemed confused, and when we got to the car, I mentioned that this happened every single time Uncle gave me a gift card. She got upset and called him and told him off for bragging about being generous but giving out fake or used cards. He later texted me and said I was wrong for calling him out in front of his mother and that he had been having financial issues he wanted to keep quiet. I responded by saying I gave him the chance to fess up the time before about the email gift card, but he wouldn't answer, and that if he was having financial issues, he shouldn't have bragged about going over the prescribed gift amount and just actually spent $25. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. At the very least, he should have told you personally afterwards so you don't look embarrassed in the store. Not the jerk. If he had financial issues, he can choose not to get you a gift or to get one of much less value. He doesn't have to say why in front of people, but using you to appear generous and hide his financial issues in front of others or whatever, nope, that's not okay. HOA neighbor keeps harassing me, finally gets a taste of her own medicine. I bought my first house in 1999 and I wanted DirecTV. I put up a satellite dish, which happened to be behind a privacy fence. I also knew the FCC ruling that HOAs couldn't prevent you from putting up a dish due to some issue with home builders who would make shady deals with cable companies to force homeowners to go with a specific company. I figured I wouldn't have any issues since it was behind a fence anyway. I got a knock at my door the next day, and it was my neighbor from across the cul-de-sac telling me she's on the board of the HOA. Your dish is in violation and must be removed. This was my first encounter with her. I politely explained the law as I knew it and told her to have a nice day. We didn't speak again and she ended up moving out soon. Well, it turns out she didn't move out and was just renting to some other lady that I never spoke to, and the HOA lady moved back a year later. There was an easement behind my house which was properly mowed when I moved in. I would hit golf balls down there with my wedge, and my neighbor was into archery and used it as his range. By the second summer I lived there, it was overgrown and an eyesore. I couldn't even see the creek just behind my house anymore. One weekend, I borrowed my dad's utility trailer, and I spent 3 days clearing out our little section behind the houses, hauling all of the debris away, probably 2 trips a day. My arms were covered in cuts from the briars, and apparently I was also dealing with sumac, poison ivy, and some other stuff because by Monday I was having an allergic reaction so badly that I went to the doctor to get a shot. Laid up in the house all day, and I got a knock at the door. It's the neighbor again. Apparently there's a rule that you cannot store a trailer in the driveway for more than 3 days, and this was day 4. I needed to remove it by the end of the day or face a $500 fine. She handed me a paper listing the rule, and I considered just paying the fine, but instead I angrily drove an hour each way to return my dad's trailer after spending half the day already waiting in a hospital lobby. I got home after dark. What struck me as odd was that there was a list of things you couldn't store in your driveway: personal watercraft, boats, trailers, etc. The odd part was that motorcycle was listed on there. I don't ride one myself, but I thought it was a totally reasonable thing to keep in a driveway. After I finished all of this work, this woman would routinely walk through my yard without asking, but since she was taking her grandkid to play in the creek, I never said anything, even though it bothered me she never asked. A year or so later, I wanted to sell the house and move into something bigger. I had talked to a realtor already, and I was getting things tidied up to have the house shown. As I was cleaning out a drawer, I noticed that paper the HOA lady had given me, and I remembered the part about motorcycles being listed. You see, the HOA lady had started dating an older gentleman, and he had moved in with her. Turns out he rode a Harley, which was always parked in her driveway. She was home, so I walked over there and politely informed her about the violation. The next day, the motorcycle was parked on her back porch, the one she bragged about to everyone who would listen, so she could tell them how much it cost. I laughed to myself, but then I remembered the part about it needing to be behind a fence. Another knock at the door, and within a few days, a fence company was building a 6-foot privacy fence which completely hid her fancy new deck. My realtor had been on my case for at least a week about needing to put up a for sale sign, so as soon as the fence was finished, I told her it was okay. I sold the house quickly and moved out at the end of the month. Oh, and by the way, the fence was completely hideous and looked out of place because of the way her lot was shaped. Am I the jerk for saying no to my boss after she asked me to watch her kids this weekend? So I'm 22, female, and my sister is getting married this coming weekend, and I will be gone Thursday through Sunday. I've had this known that I was going to be gone for 7 months. 7 months. I would even remind every month or so, just so I knew that she knew. I nanny 2 amazing kids who are 6 and 8. This is the first time I have ever asked to have some time off. My boss has always been like, "Oh yeah, sure, sounds like a beautiful wedding." However, I got a text 2 hours ago saying she really needed me this weekend and she couldn't find anyone else. I was upset, but I know how to act calm since, it's my job to stay happy and calm. I texted her back a quick apology, but said I really didn't want to miss my sister's wedding as she's my only sibling. Well, boss woman went off the deep end and said that if I didn't show up to watch her kids this weekend, that I won't have a job come Monday. I replied with this exactly. "Look, I'm so sorry that you're having a hard time looking for someone to cover. I can reach out to a few nanny friends I have and see if any of them would like to pick this up. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment for my sister, and if it means I will lose my job, then sadly I will have to accept that. I love this job and your kids, and I hope we can work something out. I think it would devastate them, but you do what you need to, and I will accept that." She threw a few insults at me and said I'm abandoning them. I don't know what to do. I don't want to get a new job because I work so well with these 2 kiddos. My mom told me I was a jerk for so quickly accepting that I might get fired and told me that work just sucks sometimes and you gotta suck it up. Mom says I should have been an adult and just missed my sister's wedding. I don't know, should I? Am I really that big of a jerk for saying no? Edit, just to clarify, me and my mom don't have a good relationship. I didn't ask her for her advice. She was in the room with my sister, and as I was venting to my sister, I would have gone no contact at 18 if it wasn't for my dad. Can we please stop talking about it now? I've dealt with so much crap from her, but that's for another day. Not the jerk. Start looking for a new job now, and when they ask when you can start, list it for the day you're done with the wedding festivities. This woman must have a lot of backup options for childcare if she can so casually threaten your job like that and talk to you in that way. She must be used to getting her way to do such a 180 on you like that. You can be the one to teach her this valuable lesson about valuing an employee nice enough to give extensive notice in advance when they won't be able to be on the job. After all, you gave her plenty of notice along with reminders, and the fact that she's in the lurch now is because she didn't respect you and your personal time enough to make plans for this time months ago. While it's true that you do sometimes have to suck it up as an adult, that time is not when you've given your employer more than half a year's notice that you'll need this specific time off. It's very much being an adult to prioritize your sister's wedding over a job that doesn't value you enough to respect that you had arranged this time off months ago. Ugh, it makes me so sad that OP's mom is this brainwashed too. Does she really think OP is in the wrong here? This fear that you can be fired any moment for not doing whatever insane thing your boss asks of you is so real for a lot of people because it's true. You can be fired at any moment for almost any reason / no reason in the good old greatest country on earth. I'm glad more people are realizing they don't need to accept this crap. OP, you're part of a changing labor movement. Learn your worth now and don't let your next employer treat you like this. You know it was an empty threat too. What is she going to do on Monday if she fires you? Between that and the yelling and the guilt trip, you know she's desperate for help. Nobody likes being taken advantage of. Rich Karen insults my blue-collar husband, so I made her cry. I, 34 female, have a little sister who's 30, who's married to a wealthy businessman in our state. I'm also married. Both my husband and I work blue-collar jobs. We have very different lifestyles. I personally don't feel comfortable relying on someone to do everything for me, and I'm independent. She, on the other hand, relies on my brother-in-law for everything and doesn't work at all. We aren't close and never have been for other reasons. She lives hours away and recently was in town for a charity event and was staying with me for a week. Immediately, she was rude and judgmental of the way our household runs. She told me it's sad that my 2 boys share a room and my husband has a game room for himself. I was shocked and told her that the boys are 4 and 2 and they don't need their own huge fancy rooms and that his game room is half the size of a standard room. She had more to say about other things we did in the house, acting like she's so much better than me and feels bad for me and the kids. We grew up together in an extremely poor household. I don't understand why she was acting like we didn't experience way worse. She was rude the whole stay. My husband even told me she asked him why he doesn't cook or spend time with the boys after he just worked a 10-hour shift. Coming from a lady with a live-in nanny and a chef, I was shocked and appalled by her attitude. I confronted her the next day about chastising my husband, and she said she did it because she felt bad that I did most of the work in the house and he barely did anything. I told her she doesn't do anything. She doesn't work, she doesn't watch her kids, she doesn't clean or cook. All she does is shop and go to charity events, and that my husband works more in a day shift than she has in years, and to stop acting like she's better than us. She started playing the victim, crying, saying that she was standing up for me and that she just wants me to not feel burnt out. And I told her that I'm sure her husband wishes someone would do the same for him, since all she does is waste his money. This is when she starts acting all high and mighty. She has the nerve to say I'm jealous of her, and that she doesn't waste money, she donates it. And she's worked with this and that organization, and she works and has a job. I told her that her job is being a gold digger. Even if she does donate money, it's not hers since she didn't make it. My husband heard and he laughed, and she said if she's a gold digger, then my husband is a jerk, and that I'm the same, and she left and blocked me, saying that I'm a jerk. She told our brother, and he says I am a jerk since I judge my sister for not doing real work, while my husband's only job is working, and I also work and do everything else, so technically if she's a freeloader, he's even worse. Am I the jerk? She came into my house and insulted us. You're the jerk. She had a point about your husband not spending time with the kids. Also about the boys sharing a room while he has a game room. If he has time for games, he has time to be a father too. Your husband seems useless in the household. Why are you so judgmental against her for being rich? Why does it bother you so much that she has a nanny and a cook? I mean, I get it. Your husband is useless and you probably are burnt out. But honey, that's not your sister's fault. In fact, she seemed to actually stand up for you. Reddit, the only place where husbands who work 10-hour shifts are considered useless. Her husband has a room dedicated to gaming when their kids have to share a room. She works, but also does 100% of the housework, cooking, and childcare, and her husband refuses to even spend time with the kids. Sorry, I'm confused. Why is OP obsessively defending her useless husband? And why exactly is her sister a jerk? You're the jerk. All your husband does is work a 9 to 5 like you do. Then you come home and do the cooking and childcare while your husband is tired from working, just like you are. Your sister observes how you do most of the household tasks and sees the imbalance of it. Considering you're both doing it 50-50, he should be cooking and doing childcare as well. Since he's not, he's a gold digger since he's getting free labor from a cook and nanny. You, just like your sister is a gold digger for getting free labor as well. Looks like you're a hypocrite. Everyone sucks here. Your sister should not be spending her entire stay with you being disrespectful and pointing out all of the problems she sees, and it's fair of you to be upset about that. You suck here because your response was entirely uncalled for. Obviously, her husband doesn't mind being the main breadwinner for their household, and that works for him. And while it may not give her an income of her own, charity work is both real and important work. That being said, she had a point. The way you word your post indicates that you don't dispute that while you and your husband both work, you end up doing the majority of the childcare and housework. Working 10-hour shifts is no excuse to come home and not spend any time with your kids and family or help out around the house as best you can. You sound jealous. I get it, your sister lives a life where she gets everything. She doesn't work, she has help. Heck, I don't even know your sister and I'm jealous. The fact is, she was taking up for you. Was it her place? Nope, but I can't say I don't agree with her. First off, your younger son could use the game room as a bedroom, giving the boy more room to play. You really don't think it's okay for a 2 and a 4-year-old to be sharing a room? Calm down, Mr. Reddit. Don't forget about your blood pressure. Okay. My deceased father-in-law stole our identities and put us in massive debt. My husband, male 30, and I, female 27, are preparing to buy our first home. We both work full-time, making above minimum wage, but not enough that either of us can get a home with our single income. Yesterday, in a conversation with the bank, we were informed that there are 4 collections accounts in my husband's name, all going back to 2018. Power, internet, and 2 credit cards. After a few hours, we were able to link each one of these accounts to his father's previous address. The bill is just shy of $6,000. After multiple conversations, we've realized the only way to clear this debt from causing issues to his credit rating is to file a police report for fraud. His father passed suddenly last September, and my husband doesn't want to tarnish his father's name and is afraid his family will look down on him for doing this. He's on the fence of how this will look if it gets out. I look at it differently. We took a massive hit paying for the funeral. Father-in-law had no money and no life insurance. I know it's his dad, but it will take us years to recover from the implications of this. None of the recovery agencies are willing to give us a bill paid in full, and even if we do pay this debt, we will lose the down payment that we've busted our tails to raise again over the past 7 months. We aren't even close to having the buying power we had last September because we only saved about half of our original down payment. So, am I the jerk for asking him to make a police report? It's not an ideal situation, but how much more can I let his father's poor financial decision in life impact our future, especially now that he's gone? Clarification for some of the repeated questions. As some of you might have gathered, yes, my husband has heritage reasons for trying to honor his father even in passing. He's also a junior. He's an only child and was raised only by his mother. His father did not sign his birth certificate, but was a large part of his life. His father's estate has gone to probate court to be settled. Because of his accent and his dislike for confrontation, my husband actually had me speak to everyone yesterday. Collection agencies did not have our address or his phone number, which is why they haven't hounded us. Everyone I spoke to has told me they have had no success in reaching him since they acquired the debt. So no, he wasn't hiding something, he just didn't know about it. We've had complications with the credit bureau for the last 3 years trying to access my husband's credit report. We've had to go to the police station and show several pieces of ID, send in letters to confirm his identity. It took the banks to get us to do everything again to resolve the issue. Originally, we thought it was because there was no activity on his credit report. Now we know that at least one account used his father's social with my husband's date of birth and created issues. Finally, for those people who want to know what the price of my bad feelings are, I just paid $18,000 out of pocket to make sure this man wasn't buried in a cardboard box. I loved my father-in-law, and he had told us about his financial struggles. We would have helped him. This isn't even about the money. Yesterday, I asked every agency if they would just put paid in full next to the bill, and I would pay it off. I'll save the money again. They wouldn't take the collections off his credit score. It's not 6 months worth of saving that I'm concerned about. It's 3 to 5 years that the record can stick to his account, which will stop us from purchasing any time in the near future. Finally, my husband needed a minute, but he's called me today at lunch and said he has to do what's right for our future. He's going to go forward with the fraud report this evening. Thank you all for the reassurance. Not the jerk. He tarnished his own reputation by committing identity theft and fraud. You're living and need your credit cleared. Your father-in-law doesn't care anymore. Don't bother telling the family. They likely will never even know about it unless you tell them. Maybe he was messing up your credit trying to help you with buying a house. Have you not seen what's going on in the news lately? Let's not talk about that, Karen. Some of us worked hard to get an 800 credit score and we shouldn't be punished for it. Am I the jerk for making my husband miss his daughter's prom? I, 36 female, have been married to my husband Josh, who's 40, for 10 years. We have a 9-year-old daughter named Lauren together, and my stepdaughter Riley is 18. About a year ago, I booked a vacation with my girlfriends for one of their bachelorette parties. It's this weekend in Tennessee. We leave Thursday and we come back on Monday. This weekend, Lauren has a cheerleading competition that Josh is taking her to. Lauren is required to have a guardian there the whole time, and she needs to arrive early Friday and leaving Sunday. We did ask the cheer director if a friend's mom could bring her and my husband could meet her thereafter, but they said no. And if she's not there for the check-in time, she can't compete that weekend. Riley's prom is Friday. Riley did not have a junior prom, and her school only has senior prom. We found out the date of prom after school started, and the trip had already been booked and paid for. My husband is now going to be missing Riley's prom to take Lauren to her competition. Riley thinks this is extremely unfair and that we're playing favorites since she'll never get this chance again, and she wants pictures with her dad and sister. She's been messaging my husband about it. Lauren doesn't want to miss her competition and risk her spot on the team. My husband asked if I'd cancel my trip, and I told him no. The trip has been booked, paid for, and I also need a break. He takes breaks and trips as well. My husband and I are now fighting because he feels like no matter what he does, he's stuck. He's already told Lauren that he'll be taking her to the cheer competition, which means he'll be missing prom. So, am I the jerk? Update. I've decided to stand my ground that I will not be canceling my trip. I will be getting on the plane in the morning. We all sat down and talked about the weekend. He explained he'll be taking Lauren to her competition while Riley's mother takes pictures with her at prom. He said he taught the girls about commitment, and he's not going to have Lauren's absence have the team forfeit. He told her we could do pictures if she wanted to put her dress on a second time, but she said it won't be the same and she's upset. Riley is upset with her father and thinks he's favoring Lauren. No jerks here. Whoever's organizing the cheerleader competition is the jerk. There's no reason they should restrict another member of the family from bringing her or simply allowing her to go with another parent and a permission slip. You're the jerk, as is your husband. Proms happen once. Your 9-year-old has plenty of cheerleading competitions. The focus should be on the once-in-a-lifetime deal. No wonder your stepdaughter is upset. Do better. I don't get why everyone's acting like an adult's world needs to revolve around prom. I remember when I went to prom. I don't remember the hour at my house beforehand where the parents insisted on taking photos. I know for a fact some of the parents weren't there for the photos because they had to work or do other stuff. It's prom, not a wedding or a graduation. Prom is about the kids spending time with each other. It's not a family event. You can tell how many teens are on this sub by all of the prom is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Give me a break and get an ounce of perspective, people. He's not missing Riley's wedding. He's not missing her graduation. He's missing a photo op. And this, and so many commenters here, are completely ridiculous. In the grand scheme of things, this is so boringly low stakes, and you are not the jerk. I'd forgive Riley for being a moody teen about it, and I wish Lauren well in her competition. You're the jerk. I'm sorry, but a bachelorette trip should not come before your kid and your husband being a good father to his daughter. Part of being a parent means you won't always get to go where you want. Take your daughter to a cheer competition, and he can go to prom pics. Not the jerk. Honestly, I fail to understand why it's such a big deal for Riley to have photos with her dad for prom. Yeah, prom is a once-in-a-lifetime event, but her dad's not going to be attending the once-in-a-lifetime event, even if he was free. She literally just wants him for 10 minutes of photos when her sister needs him for a competition a whole bunch of other people are counting on her for. I think it's ridiculous to expect OP to cancel her trip, which has been paid for a year in advance, so a girl can have 10 minutes of photos. Honestly, everyone here seems to be jumping on the Riley is right, everyone does favor Lauren train without really stopping to think about the info we have. Well, what would you do if you were OP? Would you cancel your trip and take your daughter to a cheer competition or not? Please let us know. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for our family. Am I the jerk for not allowing my husband to make our son a true junior? After having 2 girls, we found out we're finally having a boy. We are both on board with him sharing his father's name. We'll use SpongeBob here. However, a cultural difference has put a wedge between us. My culture inputs the wife's last name before the husband's last name. So if Squidward Tentacles was marrying Sandy Cheeks and they had a kid named James, his name would be James Cheeks Tentacles. My husband wants our son to have his exact name plus Junior to be the legal name, SpongeBob SquarePants Jr. I guess I'll be Patrick Star here, would like to continue the family tradition of my maiden name being used, SpongeBob Star SquarePants Jr. He is absolutely furious at this and is saying that I'm trying to rob him of his birth certificate matching his son's, that if I add my family name, our son won't be a true junior. Though I understand this is obviously a cultural difference, I don't see why a compromise can't be made here. since Star will likely get lost in official paperwork, and our son will more commonly be referred to as SpongeBob SquarePants Jr. I also feel like our son gets my husband's entire name, and I would like for my family's legacy to be included. To add to this, both of our daughters' names follow the first name Star SquarePants pattern, and my son would be the only sibling without it. I understand a father and a son having a special connection, but I feel like I shouldn't be dismissed just because I'm not the same as them. Am I the jerk? Edit. When I say finally having a boy, it's because we had 2 girls. If we already had 2 boys, I'd finally be having a girl. I don't think it's odd to want to experience having both. Edit 2. My husband has no juniors or seniors tradition in his family. There is no previous instance of this. He would be the first. Edit 3. Just because it's been asked a few times. My daughter's names were actually his ideas that I ended up loving. There was no compromise from either side. It was an easy, open conversation that stretched over the months of pregnancy, which is sort of why this rigidness for his junior has caught me by surprise. Edit 4. I didn't expect this much traction. Thank you for all the different perspectives. I had no idea so many juniors were so unhappy. Everyone's culture is different, though, as we see. This thread gave me a lot to speak on and to take in when my husband and I revisit the conversation. And thanks to everyone who loved my SpongeBobiness. Goofy Goober Gang. Not the jerk. I find it cringy when someone wants to put their child's name with their same name. Even more so when they literally want to put Junior on the legal name. I'm sure you do, my Reddit friend. I'm sure you do. 2. It'll be weird and could lead to future issues among them if the kids have different last names. 3. He's delusional. Rob him of his birth certificate matching his son? Good lord. Also, names are 2 yes, 1 no thing. So yes, a compromise has to be reached. Not the jerk. Hardly any kid wants to be a junior anyway. It's like alienating your son from your daughters. Not only does your husband show already now his clear favorism, but he'll even make it stand out to everyone. Naming is a 2 yes business, and if you can't agree, choose the best for the kids' relationship to one another, which is probably to let them have the same last name. The reason why I vote not the jerk instead of no jerks here is because being furious about not getting his way is really extreme and shows what he thinks about you, your opinions, and the girl's stand in the family. Not the jerk. I'm sorry, but I always think it's really weird when fathers are that fixated on their son having the exact same name. He's furious and being robbed? Please. I think you are also right on the money to consider the effects of the kids having different names. Does the son feel alienated from mom because he's the only one without her name? Do your daughters feel lesser because daddy seemingly had so much more investment in the son's name than theirs? At the end of the day, your son is already getting all of his father's name. I think it's petty and disrespectful of your husband to want to exclude even the smallest piece of yours. Not the jerk, but this is a red flag. Your husband is telling you that the son is more important than his daughters by wanting his son to be his mini-me. Your compromise is extremely valid, and then all the kids' names will be matching, which should be important to all parents. Also, this junior stuff, who wants it? It's just complicated. Papers get sent to the wrong person. It's just unnecessarily complicated. It might be a cultural thing, but I truly don't get it. And it's often on the male side, which indicated sons are supposed to be more important or something. I got lucky myself. My husband's ugly name that every firstborn son gets stayed unused. We're the proud parents of 2 daughters. You're the jerk. Welcome to 2023, where dads can't even name their son a junior without people flipping out. Hopefully, in his next marriage/family, he gets to name one of his sons a junior. Am I the jerk for telling my younger brother that I'm not his dad? I'm 19. My younger brother, let's call him Ed, in question is 6. My father, who's 49, has been in and out of our lives for the past 6 years. He was working abroad and providing for us during that time, but us kids have slowly started to forget his presence around the house. In 2021, he had a huge fight with my mother, who's 48, and decided to leave us under the guise of visiting his relative's funeral. We haven't seen him since. It's been very tough for my mother, who's tried her utmost best to make the best of such an awful situation for us kids without much help. So my siblings and I, mostly a bunch of teens, have tried our best to make things generally easier for her, including assisting in the raising up of Ed. Ed always used to call me by my name, but recently, like a few months ago, he's picked up the habit of calling me Dad. I felt very awkward at first, but after some thought, I figured it was an honest mistake and didn't pay much attention to it. It didn't stop there. Ed started calling me Dad more, whether it was in private or whether it was in front of the family. I was extremely confused. Earlier this afternoon, I picked him up from his school. When we reached home, I went to my mother and jokingly said, "This random kid has been following me the entire time. I think he's lost." We have a way of joking that I think is pretty wholesome. I'm sure he enjoys it too. Ed playfully tugged me on the arm and said, "How dare you say that? I'm your son." Now here's where I might be the jerk. I didn't want him to grow up believing that I was something I'm not, so I gently responded, "Ed, I'm not your dad. I'm your older brother, okay? We share the same mother." Ed replied, "You're my dad now, because my real dad is never coming back." Hearing that tore my heart, and I didn't know how to respond. I hugged him, but he didn't seem too happy and left. My mother pulled me aside later and told me that I shouldn't have said what I said and that I've hurt his feelings. I tried to explain that as much as I understand his feelings, I wanted him to know who we truly are to each other and didn't want to devastate him later in life. I also mentioned how awkward it made me feel. She said that maybe Ed is calling me dad not because I'm his actual father, but maybe because I'm one of the safest masculine examples he's got. Upon reflection, I'm starting to feel very guilty about what I did. I think my mother is right. Perhaps I was a little too harsh. I need some people to talk sense into me. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. While he may see you as a father figure, it's okay that you don't want the title. Social-wise, calling a 19-year-old dad and a 48-year-old mom could also be very awkward. Your mother should look into family counseling or even individual for your brother. It's a heavy load for all of you. Not the jerk. I think what you did was the right thing. It's difficult for kids that age to see their friends with their fathers and not understand why they don't have a dad. And they don't understand where babies come from and why your being their dad is not correct. He just sees you as a role model that he can look up to, and it kind of feels like he has a dad in you. Correcting him makes it so that this doesn't become a permanent thing and reminds him that you are not actually his father. Keep emphasizing that you're his big brother, and that's even better than his father, trying to put a positive spin on your relationship to him. Your mother, on the other hand, is using you as a quasi-replacement and doesn't want to deal with the bigger issues here. She definitely needs to face the reality of the situation and what it's doing to you and your siblings. Am I the jerk for sitting with my brother-in-law instead of cooking? I, 29 female, recently went on holiday with my husband, who's 32, his parents, his sister, who's 28, and her husband, Paul. I don't really get on with my husband's family, but the trip was to a country where a lot of their extended family now live, and I tagged along because my husband and I were going to another location the week after. I'm not particularly fond of Paul. He's just, but I'm a nice guy, personified. That said, it's not so obvious all the time that you can't be around him, and the whole family, except our respective spouses, dislike both of us. So there have been moments where I found myself seeking out Paul for conversation at events. On this particular day, my husband had gone to a business meeting and I stayed at the rental house. I walked my husband out and then saw Paul sitting by the pool, so I went to go sit with him. We were there for maybe 10 minutes when my sister-in-law came out and asked if I wanted to come inside and make lunch with her and my mother-in-law. I said, "No thanks, I'm not hungry," because I generally don't eat lunch unless at a restaurant and wasn't planning to eat. This seemed to annoy her for some reason and she went back inside. 5 minutes later, my mother-in-law came out and said I should come to the kitchen. I again said no thanks. I don't cook and I'm not planning on eating, so I'm fine here. A while later, I mentioned going to get a drink, but Paul offered to get it, so I let him. When Paul came back with the drinks, he mentioned that sister-in-law and mother-in-law were mad at me, but I brushed it off. Eventually, Paul got called in for lunch, and I went out to town for a while. When I got back, I walked into all of the in-laws, telling my husband that I need to stop treating them like the help, and how I was flirting with Paul, which simply never happened. They seemed a bit uncomfortable when they realized I'd heard them, but mother-in-law insisted my husband needed to stick up for them. My husband said it's sister-in-law's choice if she wants to be a maid for her deadbeat husband, but to stop trying to force everyone else into it. Sister-in-law started crying, Paul got upset, and the parents started arguing. Eventually, my husband told everyone to let it go, which they did, but they were very standoffish for the rest of the trip, which frankly I preferred. However, I do feel bad, because I feel like future trips like this are off the table. I was speaking to my mom about it on the phone, and she said she understands where they're coming from, since in some families that's how it works. She said maybe sister-in-law was uncomfortable that she was inside cooking for her husband while he was spending time with me, but he could have gone and sat with her if he wanted to. That said, even in my family, women do usually sit together. I'm just starting to wonder if maybe the drama was partly my fault. Not the jerk. Sister-in-law and mother-in-law created all the drama when they decided to lie and attack you to your hubby. Kudos to him for knowing what's up and putting everyone in their place. You two will be happier without being forced into situations like this again. Oh gosh, not the jerk in any way. You weren't hungry. You didn't want to eat. Who were you supposed to be in the kitchen cooking for? Everyone sucks here. The self-awareness lacking here is intense. Look, maybe it shouldn't be this way, but yeah, don't sit with brother-in-law after your sister-in-law comes and asks you to be with her. The optics here are off. You're on a family vacation. Don't care if you aren't eating lunch. You were invited in and asked to help. Go help. Is it messed up that he wasn't asked? Sure, totally. But that wasn't your reasoning. And the dude who lets his wife act like his maid got you a drink. It's not your fault, but come on. Remove yourself from the situations. That looks bad. Remove yourself from the situation and that looks bad. You denied their request for help. You did choose problematic optics of sitting alone with your brother-in-law despite being asked to go help with lunch. It's a family vacation. Even in your family, the women tend to sit together. You get it. Not really shocked they aren't your biggest fans. Basically, they probably saw you out there with your boorish brother-in-law and were like, go see if she wants to come in. And when you kept refusing, that's where it got weird. Husband buys coffee machine, upset that he has to use it. My husband loves coffee. He's the only one in the house who drinks it. Tea and coffee gives me acidity and insomnia, so I don't drink it. Recently, he bought a fancy machine that makes delicious coffee. The only problem is that the coffee trickles down drop by drop. It takes around 4 to 5 minutes to fill a tumbler, but can feel like forever if you have nothing else to do but stand there and watch it trickle down. I get the coffee machine going every morning while getting my daughter ready for school and making her breakfast. When he comes down after getting ready, his tumbler is ready to go. He leaves, then I take daughter to school, come back and work from home. So recently I had an injury that left me bedridden. Luckily, it was daughter's midterm break, so there was no pressure of getting up early to prepare her meal and taking her to school. Only thing left was the coffee. Husband says, no problem, I'll make it myself. Day 1, 2, and 3. He makes the coffee, also cleans the machine after every use. Day 4. This is too much and wasting my time. Me. Why don't you switch the machine on downstairs and then come back upstairs to get ready? We live in a duplex. Bedroom and dressing room upstairs, kitchen and living room downstairs. Also, he stopped cleaning the machine. Day 5. He's upset because he had to run up and downstairs twice to tend to his coffee. My next suggestion, move your toiletries to the downstairs washroom for a few days so you can get ready down there. I'm not comfortable with that. Well, now the only solution left is to wake up early. Day 6, 7, and 8, he wakes up early to make his coffee. He no longer cleans the machine. Day 8 evening. I'm very tired. My sleep cycle is whacked. Me. Looks like you need to make more coffee. Day 9. He is now side-eyeing me and guilt-tripping, hoping I would crawl down the stairs to make his coffee. Not happening. So he calls up the maid and tells her to start coming early to make his coffee. She's a part-time helper, and there's no way she'll come this early. Day 10, he has given up. Now he's buying his coffee from outside, and the machine remains unused. My eldest daughter refuses to babysit because she's child-free. Should I kick her out? My wife and I have 3 kids. Tina, who's 19, Jason, who's 15, and Allie, who's 14. Late last year, my sister-in-law passed unexpectedly, leaving our niece, Jenny, who's 4, orphaned. Her father is not in the picture. My wife and I, of course, agreed to take her in. It has been a huge adjustment for all 6 of us. Tina and Allie had to start rooming together. Allie is okay with this, but Tina has complained since we brought our niece home. In fact, whenever Jenny does anything typical of a 4-year-old that Tina dislikes, she will loudly and rudely comment that, "This is why I'm child-free and I will never have kids." A few weeks ago, there were big changes in our childcare coverage, and now we lack coverage for about 2.5 hours Monday through Friday. Jason and Allie both agreed to take 1 day of the week for babysitting duties. When we asked Tina to take on the other 3, she refused, stating that she is child-free and means it. I told Tina that if she won't pitch in to help the family by babysitting, then she was no longer welcome to live in our home rent-free. I told her what we would be charging her for room and board, and she had a meltdown. She did a lot of yelling and screaming, but when she realized I was serious about kicking her out if she didn't pitch in, she agreed to take on the 3 days of babysitting. Our relationship has been tense. Tina says I'm not being fair because she has to take 3 days when Jason and Allie only have to take 1 day each. I explained it's because they're still in high school and both are involved in after-school activities, while she takes college classes part-time and online while only working weekends. Also, because she is an adult and the other two are not. She has also called me a jerk and says I'm discriminating against her beliefs. Am I the jerk for forcing my adult daughter's hand in this? ETA, we can't really afford an outside babysitter right now. This was the reasoning behind charging my daughter room and board. I currently pay her school fees, car payment, car insurance, phone bill, and all of her groceries, health coverage, and utilities. I was charging her less in room and board than what her lifestyle costs monthly. If she doesn't want to babysit, she's free to stay here if she pays the amount we said in room and board. She would have to take on more hours at work to do so though. So, 2.5 hours a day for 3 days, a total of 7.5 hours a week, times 15 hours is $112 a week, times 4 weeks is $450 a month. So about $450 a month of babysitting in exchange for free rent, utilities, food, and whatever else you might be covering. That sounds reasonable. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. I think every so often, people have to take one for the team. You're asking an adult for 7.5 hours of work per week in return for free room and board. I think that's fair. Not the jerk. Your daughter is wrong and you know it. I'm sorry, but somewhere along the way, she became a spoiled, entitled brat if this is how she behaves. I mean, the sheer nerve of her to loudly proclaim she will remain child-free in the presence of her cousin? How is that remotely acceptable? If she doesn't want to have kids, that's her choice. It doesn't absolve her of caring for members of her family when they need it. I mean, this girl's mother passed, and your kid is making this about her freedom of thought. Please, let me get my fainting couch. Good for you for telling her to take a hike if she can't help out a reasonable amount. I mean, it's 2.5 hours, 3 times a week. Ugh, she's a jerk. Kudos for taking the kid in, but I have to say, you are the jerk in this regard. Your approach is entirely one-sided. You're deliberately ignoring your daughter's difficulties in becoming adjusted to this drastically different, brand new situation. You acknowledge that it has been a huge adjustment for all 6 of you, but Tina's struggles seem to have lower importance than your own and those of her siblings. Your ultimatum, babysit or you're out of here, was excessively harsh. You're the jerk. Please back off, hire a babysitter. This is a tough situation given your sister-in-law passed, but I'm going with you're the jerk. Your daughter is not a parent. She may be a legal adult, but that doesn't mean she's mature enough to take on a kid 3 out of 7 days of the week. You said she works the weekends and takes part-time classes, so essentially there's only 2 days that she has completely free that she's probably doing college work. It was your decision to take in this kid, and you need to make the proper arrangements. This is a guaranteed way to make sure your daughter never speaks to you after she moves out eventually. Karen tries to steal my dogs, big mistake. This happened when I was 12 years old, and I figured I'd share my experience with an entitled family who tried to steal my hunting dog. I grew up on the family farm in the middle of nowhere. We own approximately 350 acres, and we have a ridiculously long driveway, and you can't even see the house from the main road. So often, people see our dogs and they think that they're lost and pick them up. We have collars with our contact info that are always on them because of this fact. My parents are big on not hunting or removing wild animals unless they're a danger to us. They always had the mindset that we are living in their home. They were here first, and we should just respect them and be aware of our surroundings. For the most part, the wildlife leaves us and our livestock alone, other than Jacob, the black bear breaking into the grain shed, and the elk that eat the hay bales. We had a fairly large cougar who learned that our llamas made easy meals. The cougar ate all 9 of them in less than a year. The last straw was when I was walking in the horse pasture and interrupted the big cat's lunch, last llama. Luckily, one of the family dogs put himself between the cougar and I. I have no doubt if it wasn't for him, I'd not be here today. My dad decided he had to do something. He truly didn't want to use lethal methods and started researching other options. He came across a breeder who breeds hunting dogs and reached out. The breeder was extremely helpful and told my dad that most cougars have had some kind of run-in with hunting dogs, so they won't be as bold. So we bought a hunting dog, after doing lots of research on the breed and making sure that we could handle one. Gus Timberchopper was his name, and he was flown in from Virginia to Canada and quickly became a valuable family member. As everyone knows with any hound, the nose goes down and the ears turn off. Gus becomes a favorite of all our neighbors as his wandering helps with predators and livestock. Life was peaceful other than a few trips to the shelter to pick up Gus. The peace would not last long though. Enter entitled family. They saw our 5 dogs chilling on our property and decided they were abandoned or lost. Not the case. My brother and I were playing in the creek and the dogs had wandered away not too far, but far enough that the family didn't see us. The entitled family then pulled off the road and got out of the vehicle and started trying to coax the dogs into their van. 3 of our dogs ran back to the creek where we were playing. Our Pyrenees, Togo, and Gus stayed. The entitled dad somehow caught Gus and started dragging him to their van. Gus started to freak out. He started to bark, alerting me that something wasn't right. So I went to go see what was happening. Well, 12-year-old me saw some random guy trying to get Gus in his van, and the entitled kids and mom were gushing over how cute he was and how he will be the perfect dog for them. I wasn't too nervous, as this happens often. People see the dogs, no house, and they think they're lost or someone dumped them, and try to help the owners by taking them to a shelter or vet, then often call or stop by to apologize for causing any inconvenience. I yelled out, "Hey, that dog isn't lost, he's with us." The entitled kids started to scream that they wanted the dog and they deserved the dog. Then they burst into uncontrollable sobs. The entitled mom asked me to come closer so we don't have to yell. I politely declined and said again that Gus was ours and asked the dad to please stop. Entitled dad grunted and tried to pick up Gus again. Gus ended up biting the guy on his hand. He didn't break the skin, it was more of a warning nip. The entitled dad let go and Gus came running back to me. Entitled dad looked furious and started to walk towards me and Gus, yelling that I shouldn't own dogs because clearly we don't train or properly care for them, and how much better of a home they could offer him. I was starting to panic because this guy looked so mad and he was raging that he would teach my dog proper manners. I'm backing away while holding onto Gus's collar. Togo quickly stood in front of me. I was begging the entitled dad to back off and to leave. Entitled dad said something along the lines of, "I'm taking this dog to teach you a lesson. If you don't look after your pets, they'll find a better home." I told him to stop, as Togo is very protective of me and my brother, and while he has lots of training, as he started showing signs of being too aggressive with people, we didn't want him to bite someone unprovoked. Entitled dad did stop for a moment, but the entitled mom and kids were screaming that they wanted this dog. It had to be this dog. Togo gave entitled dad lots of warnings, low growls, and bared teeth, lunging and snapping. Entitled dad tried to grab Gus by the collar again and ended up knocking me down. Togo latched onto the entitled dad's arm and started to shake his head and yank the guy off of his feet. One of the other dogs, she belonged to my uncle, came after I screamed and grabbed entitled dad by his pant leg, ripping it apart. My brother also joined because he heard me scream. I got him to take Gus and told him to run home and to get dad. Togo wouldn't listen when I told him to let go. Entitled kids and mom tried to get out to help. Thankfully, they listened when I told them to stop. Entitled dad was yelling to call the dog off and how he would see it that all of our dogs would be put down and that we would never be allowed to own another one again. At this point, I was scared, angry, and overwhelmed. I started to cry. I thought that Togo would be put down for sure, and that if entitled dad took us to court, he'd somehow get Gus. Togo let go of his arm, but made it clear that entitled dad was to stay on the ground. Anytime he tried to stand, Togo would knock him back down and growl in his face. My dad came racing down the driveway, ready for war. Entitled family started saying how Togo attacked unprovoked and that I misunderstood what they were doing. My dad told the family that the police and an ambulance will be arriving and that they best stay put, and if they decided to drive away, that he has pictures of the dad and vehicle and will press every kind of charges he legally can. My dad called some neighbors to come help if things went sideways. The police and ambulance arrive. Entitled dad needs stitches in his arm. They told the police that they thought the dogs weren't mine and that I was lying, and the kids want a dog so bad, but they don't want to pay for one. They saw ours and thought that they were strays. None of our dogs look like strays. They're all well-fed, brushed, and spoiled. Entitled dad then said that when I told him to stop or he could get hurt, he took it as I was threatening him, and that's why he didn't listen. Him and his wife were demanding that Togo be put down immediately and that we are animal hoarders who need to be charged and banned from owning any kind of animal. The police and paramedics told him he was very lucky. Togo is a guardian dog, and they're bred to be protectors. Togo was only trying to protect me. Entitled dad didn't care. He took us to court. Entitled dad got 34 stitches in his arm. In the courthouse, entitled mom came to my parents and said she had an offer. If they accepted, they'd drop the lawsuit. They wanted us to give them Gus. Dad told her no way. In the end, thanks to the game cameras Dad had in various places, we had footage. The judge was less than amused, as entitled family made it sound like I ordered my dog to attack them when they just wanted to play with the dog. Judge pointed out that a 12-year-old girl versus a 40-something-year-old man was not a fair fight, and that my dogs just evened the odds. We did have to isolate Togo and made sure that our dogs had microchips and their tattoos were legible. Dad also decided that he'd fence off my brother and I favorite places so that the dogs can't wander. I do wonder sometimes about entitled family, and I have 2 questions I'd love to ask. After all the expenses, wouldn't it have been cheaper to just buy a dog or adopt rather than trying to steal one? Don't bother me unless it's an emergency. This morning, I got into my car and realized I left my headlights on. Thankfully, modern technology meant it had automatically switched off when the key was removed, but it reminded me of a time where this wasn't so. Many years ago, I was working one of my first jobs in a little cafe, nearing the end of my training period. It was a quiet day, perfect to put the newbie on with only one experienced staff member. The experienced staff member called in sick. Boss had to come in and cover, until Sue could come in early. Boss wanted to use the time on site to do paperwork out the back. I'll be in here if you have any questions. I very annoyingly had a lot of questions. How to avoid an incorrect transaction, where to find more special paper for the credit card machine, what to do when the coffee grinder stopped working. Finally, boss said, "I'm busy. Don't bother me unless it's an emergency. Let me know when Sue is here." Shyly, I replied, "That's what I came to tell you. Sue just arrived." "Great. Any more questions, ask her." Sue took over the coffee area and got me on restocking, clearing tables and emptying the bins, and other necessary grunt work. I went out to the outside bins through the little staff parking area and saw my boss's old car there with the headlights on. I went back to my boss's office. "Boss? Is it an emergency?" he snapped. "Not to me," I replied. "Then go away." I left quickly. I went to tell Sue instead. "Sue." Then I changed my mind. Boss doesn't want to be disturbed unless it's an emergency, so I'm supposed to ask you if I have any more questions. Sue and I worked pleasantly until the end of my shift a few hours later. As I gathered my things to leave, Boss ran by me, knocking into me a bit. Without turning around to see if I was okay, Boss said, "Sorry, I'm in a rush." I slowed down to see what happened next, getting out my brick of a phone to text my mother I was on my way home. I could hear my boss losing it. "OP!" Oh no. Boss realized what I was going to tell him earlier. I was in trouble. "Can you bring your car in and give me a jump start? My battery is flat." Only a few cars could fit, so only senior staff and management could park there. I walked here. I live 10 minutes up the hill. I raced off before Boss could blame me. The next time I was on shift with Sue, I asked what happened to Boss. Headlights left on, got a flat battery. Boss tried to jumpstart it with my car, but it didn't work. Had to call a taxi. Funny that neither of us noticed the lights were on when we walked by it. And I realized, of course, she had to have seen it when she walked in. I can only imagine why she didn't say anything either. Am I the jerk for calling my brother-in-law a joke of a father in front of his family? My sister, Rachel, was married to Daniel, 40 male, for 8 years. They were high school sweethearts, and they tied the knot shortly after their graduation. They had a daughter together, Alice, who's 16, who was Rachel's entire world. Rachel ended up diagnosed with cancer when she was only a few weeks away from delivery, and after Alice was born, she started chemo ASAP. It ended up being treatment-resistant and aggressive, and Rachel ended up passing by the time Alice was 2. Daniel emotionally checked out completely. He decided to take a job opportunity abroad, and he left Alice and mine in my wife's custody. At first, he said it was temporary, that he just needed to get things in order before Alice came to live with him. But eventually it was obvious that it would be much longer. He signed his rights over to us, and we've been raising her alongside our 3 sons. As far as the boys are concerned, Alice is their big sister, and as far as Alice is concerned, they're her little brothers. Daniel got remarried, and he had 2 daughters. Alice wasn't invited to the wedding. We only found out about it after his brother mentioned it to us. Daniel does send money for her, and they write letters back and forth like he and Rachel used to do in school. I know that there has to be some sort of part of him that loves his daughter, but it's hard to believe it considering how he's practically abandoned her after Rachel passed. Daniel's brother Wes has helped out a bit with Alice too. She'll go over to his house at least once a month to see him, his wife, and their kids. A few days ago, I was taking Alice over, and when we got there, we saw that Daniel and his wife and kids were there. I was ready to get back in the car and take Alice home, but Daniel saw us and came outside. He came up to Alice and tried to give her a hug, but she stepped back from him. He looked hurt, and when he asked why she didn't want to give her dad a hug, I snapped. I asked, how could he seriously stand there and refer to himself as her dad when all he's ever been to her is a pen pal? I called him a joke of a father and a sorry excuse for a man. His wife and their daughters overheard what I said. When Alice and I got back home, Wes called me and left a message saying that he agrees that Daniel hasn't been the best father to Alice, but I didn't need to tell him that in front of his wife and their kids. Daniel feels the same way. I did apologize to Alice for disparaging her father, but she just shrugged and said it would have only been disparaging if it wasn't true. My wife said she probably would have done worse if she had been there, but part of me does feel that I could have said it out of earshot of his kids. I'd say your heroic behavior and stepping up as a father figure for 14 years makes up for one slightly jerk comment, and the only reason it was a jerk comment was because it was in front of his kids. Not the jerk. They'll understand once they're older. Not allowed to remove my neck brace? Okay. Years ago, I was in a bad car accident. An older man turned left in front of me at an intersection and T-boned me. Ambulances were called. I was put on a backboard with a neck brace and brought to the hospital where I was deposited on the gurney in a hallway as there were no rooms available at the time. I laid there for quite a while waiting to be seen. My injuries weren't bad, basically just got banged around and bruised up, so I was okay with the waiting. But I was in pain and laying on my back was very uncomfortable. I didn't think there was anything wrong with my neck. The only pain I felt was due to the darn neck brace digging into the bottom of my skull, and I really wanted to lay in a different position. Not only to alleviate some of the pain in the rest of my body, hopefully, but also because I was parked right under a light that was blaring in my eyes the whole time. So I started taking off my neck brace. A nurse spotted me doing this and ran over very upset with me and told me I had to keep the neck brace on. I tried telling her my neck was fine, but she was adamant that I not remove the brace until the doctor had examined me, which I get. I'm guessing at the very least it goes very much against protocol, and at the very worst, it would have been a huge liability if I took the brace off and there was something wrong. Plus, I didn't want to upset the nurse or be one of those patients, so I begrudgingly complied, even though I thought it was overkill. I tried to reposition myself as best I could to the least painful position, not very successfully, unfortunately. However, the darn light blaring directly down was driving me crazy, even when I closed my eyes. Finally, out of frustration, I took the blanket that was over me, pulled it up more, and threw it over my head. Ah, finally, no more light in my eyes. Bliss. I just laid there trying to block the pain and daydream to pass the time, wondering how long I'd be there for. Not too long after, I hear what sounds like a bit of commotion and someone saying something about a deceased patient in the hallway. I was like, oh man, that's scary. I get that there are no rooms available, but to leave a deceased patient just laying out for everyone to see? I thought that was uber creepy. Suddenly, the same nurse that gave me crap about the neck brace pulls the blanket off of my head, scaring me, and she starts yelling at me that I'm not allowed to put the blanket over my head, and what was I doing? It was then that I realized the deceased patient they were talking about was me. I said, oh crap, I'm so sorry. I just wanted the light out of my eyes, and I can't move my head with this brace on. To say the nurse was not impressed would be an understatement, but she did find a room to move me and position me not under the light, which I thanked her very much for. She just gave me a look and walked away. Sorry. As someone who spent years working in the ER, this has gotta be one of my favorite stories we've read. The lack of rooms, uncomfortable patients, rude nurses, and deceased patients just lying around. Something tells me this was an HCA-owned hospital. I'm the reason they haven't fixed the lock in 20 years. I work in downtown Denver and had a couple of hours before an appointment, so I decided to go get lunch. I'll occasionally pop into one of the places I used to work at because I know the food is really good. Every time I go into this one place, I remember what happened to me one time 20 years ago. I was having a beer and the bar was slow, so I was chatting with the bartender and telling the story to him. 20 years ago, I was a server at this particular place and they had a no cell phone policy. Yes, we had cell phones 20 years ago. You had to leave it in your locker or get written up. I already had one write-up, so I put mine in my locker and went about greeting my first table. It was slow and I had the urge to go to the bathroom, so I went before the rush would hit. I washed my hands and tried to open the door and nothing. The lock had broken. I started knocking on the door. Now, the employee bathroom was located back by the lockers, kind of tucked off in a corner of the kitchen, away from the line where people would be. So I start pounding on the door. Anytime I heard a noise, I'd pound on the door and yell. But the noise of a busy kitchen and lunch rush drowned me out. 15 minutes goes by, still no one. Another 10 minutes, now I'm wondering how I'm supposed to get out of here and how long am I going to be stuck in here. Then I heard a noise close by and I started yelling and pounding on the door. Someone had gone to their locker for cigarettes. They heard me. They told me I had been triple set and they couldn't find me and the manager was furious with me. Of course, I'm relaying my situation to them. They get the manager who comes over and tells me to open the door. Duh, I can't. They had to track down the maintenance guy who was another 20 minutes away, but luckily the hinges were on the outside of the door and he was able to get me out. By now, I'd been in there for the better part of an hour. First thing the manager said to me, they said with an angry voice, "Why didn't you just call us with your cell phone?" Of course, they also had to check the lock to make sure I wasn't making the story up, and I wasn't. My first table was understanding and laughed about it with me, but left me no tip. I didn't get sat at another table that day. So I finished telling the bartender this story. I go to use the restroom, and when I came back, he's confirmed with the GM the reason the employee bathroom has a sliding bolt latch instead of a lock on the door handle is so an employee can't get locked in there. The GM never knew who that person was though, as they had taken over years after I had left. They both bought me a beer. Am I the jerk for refusing to put my fiance's daughter on my airline benefits? I, male 31, have two siblings, a sister who's 23 and a brother who's 37. Me and my siblings are all very close. I'm especially really close to my little sister, Shannon. Me and my siblings have the same mom, but different dads. Me and my brother know our fathers, while my younger sister, her dad walked out on her at 4, and she knows nothing about him. Also, my mom passed from cancer 5 years ago. My sister always jokes that she's an orphan, but she suffered some serious depression since our mom passed, and it's been challenging, but she's so much better. I'm a higher up at an airline, and I decided to put her on my benefits, which allows her to fly for free, and now she travels all the time and is living out her early 20s, and I can't be any more happier. Her goal is to visit places our mom could never go to because she had us so young. Recently, I got engaged to my fiance, Taylor, who's 29, and Taylor has a daughter who's 6, Maddie, and Maddie's dad isn't really in her life, and I took on the father figure role, and I have no issue with that. Since me and Taylor are getting married, I told her she can be added to my flight benefits as a wife, and she brought up, what about Maddie? And I told her she couldn't be added given I only have 4 people on my account. My dad, my brother, my sister, and now Taylor. I told her I hit the max of people on my account and she wasn't pleased with that. She recommended I take off Shannon because she doesn't actually work and it's time for her to get an actual job and pay for her own flight tickets. I took very much offense to that. She's right, my sister doesn't work, but that's because she's in school and she lives off the inheritance my mom left us. So it's not like a freeloader. I told her she's being ridiculous because I get 8 buddy passes a year. And if me, her, and Maddie wanted to go on a trip, she can still come, but we'll just have to pay at most $60 a ticket. She told me I'm being a jerk for not including her daughter in my flight benefits, when really, I don't get how, given her daughter is in school the majority of the year, and will most likely not use the benefits as much as my sister uses it now. So, am I the jerk? Edit. Why I don't want to remove brother or father is, my dad is a senior in his retirement, and I want him to have the option to travel when he feels comfortable to. And as for my older brother, he has a wife and kids, and since he's on the account, he can fly for free and his family can use buddy passes. If he's off the account, he can't fly without me or use a buddy pass because he isn't on the account. It's hard to explain, but if he's not on the account, he can't use buddy passes with his wife without me being present. Let's break this down. Your fiance, the woman you love so much till death do you part, her daughter that loves you enough to consider you a father, what part of this is hard for you? In the future, if you have a biological kid with your fiance, will you want that one on the list? Are you seriously hearing yourself? Maybe put your dad on the buddy list system instead. How often does he fly? Now, to be fair, I see the logic in your thinking. I do, really. How often will you need to fly the kid places, being in school and all? But the same could be said for your sister, who is also in school most of the year. Maybe talk it out. The whole group all talk together. Explain your views and hear theirs. Actually hear them out and come to an actual agreement. I guarantee this will work itself out when you do. You're the jerk, but there's hope for you yet. My question is, are you sure you want to marry her? Yeah, sounds to me like she's showing you her true colors. These are some major red flags, and you deserve so much better. Oh, Reddit boy, you're really catching on to the Reddit lingo, aren't you? We've been reading these stories every day for the past 5 years. I literally hear this stuff in my sleep at this point. My neighbor is hoarding animals, and it's ruining my quality of life. Should I report her? This lady moved into the neighborhood a couple years ago and turned her very small backyard into an overcrowded hoarding situation with way too many animals. Now she's turning me into a Karen. So for context, it's me, my husband, and our dog. Nice, quiet, residential neighborhood. House next to me has a small farm. Chickens, roosters, ducks, turtles, rabbits, and cats that are extremely invasive and have taken over my yard and have destroyed everything in it and use it as a bathroom all over. We have a 1-year-old boxer who now can't play in our fenced-in backyard. The neighbor's cats are always using it as a bathroom, and when I try and talk to the neighbor, her response is that I must firmly tell them that they're doing a bad thing and then tell them to never ever come in my yard again, as it's my responsibility to keep them out. Like, what? One of her cats did test positive for worms, as animal control made her get them tested and share the results. And because she won't keep them out of our yard, instead of letting our dog go out to play and use the bathroom, she now has to be leashed, and we hit the dog park 2 times a day. Not complaining about the dog park, but some days I don't want to scan the yard for cat crap, and I just want to stay home. I'm also afraid my dog will catch and hurt the animals. She's not vicious, just a boxer that likes to chase and jump. One of her chickens decided to escape and went to the bathroom all over my car. It scratched up the hood and cost about $1,100 to get it fixed. She keeps the duck inside at night and puts it out at 5 a.m. when it starts quacking nonstop until 8ish when she brings it in. The roosters go off all hours of the night and day. So now I get up at 5 a.m. every day. I guess I might as well take up jogging. I work at home. The duck and roosters are so bad that I moved my office to the other side of my house so I can work in peace. But this duck roams the neighborhood and has taken up residence in my driveway. If I was a paranoid person, I would think he was stalking me. I love animals, and I'm not a get-off-my-lawn type of person, but the invasiveness of her animals and her lack of responsibility is driving me nuts. I've already sent some pictures and a formal complaint to animal control, where they came out and they fined her. Code enforcement handles the other animals, and they also came out and made her get rid of the roosters and said she can only have a total of 6 birds, so she had to get rid of chickens too. Today my husband gets home and there's a turtle in the driveway. I ask her if it's hers, and sure enough, she said yes. And so are the 4 in your backyard. Totally not mad about the turtles, just that every day it's something new that escapes her house. I'm ready to call animal control and code enforcement again, and a real estate lawyer. We can't use our yard. I can't open windows on the very few nice days we have. I can't sleep in on my days off. My dog can't play in her yard. I can't talk to her anymore because of the nonsense coming out of her mouth. Even animal control said she has issues and code enforcement is tired of her, but also not willing to do anything. Set up cameras outside. If you had video or pictures of the chickens on your car, take her to small claims court for that $1,100. She doesn't lose sleep making your life heck. Return the favor. Call animal control, call zoning, call a lawyer. You have a right to enjoy your yard, and she has an obligation to keep her animals under control. My boyfriend demands my friends and family call him Dr. Jones instead of by his first name. My boyfriend, who's 32, is a doctor. I met him through my dad back when we were traveling, and after we started dating, he started coming over to my hometown to visit. When I introduced him to my family and friends, I told them his full name, then occupation, then mentioned the other stuff like age and hometown, etc. All good until months later when he started complaining about my family and friends referring to him by his first name and not putting doctor before. I found this strange. I told him that's his professional title, but as a society, we use first names, nicknames, etc. He said he can't help but feel annoyed, especially considering that these people don't know him well. But it's been 8 months. He even said once we're married or engaged, then they can start referring to him using his first name. Recently, he started correcting whenever my friends or family call him by his name. His tone becomes aggressive, and then he goes on a long lecture about how they should put doctor before mentioning his name. It became exhausting because my friends and family can't understand his strange hang-up, and he keeps picking fights with them about it. Last night we were visiting my parents and my dad called him Justin instead of Dr. Justin. My boyfriend started arguing with him, which caused a huge fight in the house and we ended up leaving. In the car, he went off on me, saying I'm letting friends and family disrespect him continually by letting them call him by just his first name. I told him he was at fault here and he was being unreasonable because what he's expecting is bizarre. He said he takes pride in his profession and that he sacrificed so much to get to where he is today, and my family and friends literally lose nothing if they respect his wishes. He called me an enabler and said that siding with them paints me in a bad light and advised me to step up and take a stand. But again, I thought he was overreacting and being hostile for no reason. We got home and he shut me down and refused to speak to me. Mom called me later and we talked a bit. Today he's gone completely radio silence, but the look on his face is telling. Am I the jerk? Edit. We don't have anyone who's a doctor in the family or friend groups, but we know for certain that we don't use people's professional titles all the time when addressing them, especially not people we have a relationship with. I don't understand how me and my family are offending him. He is choosing this hill to die on apparently. I smell a narcissist, not the jerk. He has a God complex, which is not an uncommon trait in doctors. Not saying they all have it, but it's not uncommon either. He's super full of himself. I can't imagine dating someone or even being friends or acquaintances with someone who insisted on being called doctor in a social setting. Am I the jerk for telling my husband's nurse that she doesn't get to dictate who is and isn't allowed in my home? My husband, who's 36, has been in the hospital for weeks. He just got discharged, but he needs home care. We got him a nurse to be able to monitor his medical devices. His nurse comes over to handle stuff like catheter, cannula insertions, and medication intake. I've noticed she's been acting a bit rude and overstepping by trying to tell me when to enter my bedroom where my husband is staying, or when the kids get to come in. I already told her how I felt about her attitude, and she claimed she was just doing her job, making sure that my husband is getting enough rest. Yesterday, my parents came over to visit my husband since they had been planning to come for a while but couldn't find time. I opened the door for them and led them towards the bedroom. The minute we walked in, the nurse started redirecting us outside. I was confused. I asked what was she doing, and she told me she was in the middle of removing my husband's catheter, and this wasn't a time for a visit. I nearly laughed, but she forced us out and shut the door. I was fuming. I had my parents go into the living room, then came back and started arguing with her. She told me that my husband was in a vulnerable state and needed privacy, and she, as his nurse, simply provided it to him and had my visitors go wait outside. I told her this is my home, my bedroom, and those were my parents coming over to see my husband and check in on him, so they were his visitors as well. She told me it wasn't the right time for a visit, but I told her that she's in my home, and she was overstepping by trying to dictate who is and who isn't allowed in to see my husband. I told her I'd report her for this attitude, and she kept saying that she was just trying to do her job and told me to go ask my husband about how he felt about having people see him in such a state. I asked her to leave. Then after my parents were done with their visit, I tried to talk to my husband. He told me he did feel like his privacy was being violated and that I was being too harsh on the nurse. I told him that my parents were worried sick and wanted to see him. He said this wasn't the right time and basically backed the nurse up. We got into an argument over this, and then he told me to let it go and let the nurse do her job. But I said that she keeps acting aggressively and like I was some outsider in my own home. Am I the jerk in this situation, or is she really overstepping? You're the jerk. Her job is to provide care and to advocate for your husband. The fact that he sided with her should tell you that you are out of line. Having a catheter replaced is always done behind closed doors. They kick you and your folks out of the hospital room for that, so her insisting on his privacy is normal. And you're acting like it was some huge inconvenience and waited ages. It was a few minutes, so chill. Your folks will understand. She may be abrupt with what she's doing, or she may be having to be forceful because you're not listening. If the nurse says, now isn't a good time for the kids or whoever to visit, don't say, whatever, this is my home. Listen to her. It's not just your bedroom, it's his convalescence room too. He needs time, space, and privacy, and a good nurse will ensure he gets those even if a wife is being a little too entitled. And your husband agrees with her. Then why are you even asking? You're the jerk. The nurse is being the bad guy, so your husband doesn't have to be. Any half-decent nurse will take the fall by throwing out anyone the patient doesn't want to see. You're the jerk, OP, and calm down. As a nurse, I can 100% confirm this is the case. She's asking you to leave to protect the privacy of her patient. That is her job. No man wants to go through a painful procedure like this in front of their in-laws. Get a grip. This isn't about you. Drop your attitude and be there for him. You're the jerk. Medical professional here. The job of the nurse is to take care of her patient's needs, not yours. So yeah, you're the jerk. She wasn't dictating who could see your husband, but when they could see him. Also, if the nurse is telling you your husband needs more rest, it's probably because he said something to her. If he was in the hospital for weeks and still needs a catheter, etc., he probably does need a ton of rest. Maybe you do too. Having a husband who's sick and you having to take care of your kids alone is a lot of stress. I am hoping you can have someone watch him and the kids for a bit and go have some time with your friends. Caretakers need care too. Karen threatens to burn my house down. Long story short, I was best friends with Sarah from age 13 to 18. We're now in our mid-30s. We stayed in touch after high school, talked occasionally, and even hung out a few times. To my knowledge, there was never any animosity. Anyway, my dad and Sarah's mom worked together and are acquaintances, and when my dad bumped into Sarah's mom at the grocery store a few weeks ago, she mentioned she was selling her home soon, the house that Sarah had grown up in. It is the size we need in the district we need. My dad told Sarah's mom we may be interested in taking a look at it before it went on the market, so we arranged a date and a time. I excitedly texted Sarah to tell her that we were seeing her mom tomorrow to look at the house and received replies such as, "You're not gonna get the house so you and your dad can buzz off. That's so inappropriate, so drop it, it'll never happen. I'll burn it down before that happens. That's so inappropriate to try and buy my childhood home without even talking to me." So I ask, am I the jerk for not consulting my childhood friend about potentially buying her former home? Note, neither her nor her brother are interested in buying it as they have their own homes. Update, her mom called off our meeting to see the house. I'm assuming due to Sarah completely losing her crap, as she stated in other texts she was gonna go flip out on her mom. Sarah has struggled with mental health in the past and has actually spent some time in a mental health institution. Due to the unhinged texts and open threats, it's probably for the best her mom called off the meeting and that we don't go through with purchasing, as we have 3 kids and we don't want to be constantly looking over our shoulder. I'm sure something else will come along, so I'm not upset about the house at this point, but I will say the friendship is definitely over. Not the jerk. She needs to get over herself. Her parents own the house and they decide if you can buy it or not. Show them the text their daughter sent you. Not the jerk. And I feel like Sarah is upset the house is being sold because she wanted to inherit it. Not the jerk, and Sarah seems extremely unhinged over this. She gets no say in who her mother chooses to sell her home to. Are you paying a fair market price? If so, I would tell Sarah's mom that Sarah seemed upset about you buying the house. This may be an issue between the two of them more than you. Am I the jerk for embarrassing my neighbor? I'm 29, female. My husband, who's 31, and I moved into a nice flat near the city center. We're in England. It's a rather nice area. Our next door neighbor has her balcony next to ours. My husband is half Spanish, half Polish. I'm Polish. We speak both languages and often speak in a weird combination of both, sometimes adding English into the mix. Anyway, both languages are spoken rather fast, or they seem so, and can sound a bit aggressive if you're not used to them. I've had people assume I was angry because of how the language sounded to them when I was having a completely pleasant conversation. My neighbor was no exception. She's heard us talking and must have assumed that we were arguing. We weren't. She approached me and asked me, concerned, if I was okay. I was confused, and she explained that she'd heard our arguments. I explained that I was fine and we hadn't been arguing at all. I suggested that it might be because of how harsh both languages can sound. She didn't believe me and told me she was there if I needed help. I told my husband, and we laughed and decided to speak a bit more quietly just in case. One day we were chatting and joking around when 2 police officers knocked on our door. Someone called with concerns about my well-being. What? We explained our situation, they took me aside, and I had to explain everything. It was humiliating, even more so for my poor husband. The next day, my neighbor approached me again, and I repeated that we weren't arguing and she had to let it go. She told me that she wouldn't have to worry if we just switched to English. I told her we wouldn't be doing that, and she'd have to take my word for it and to stop bothering us. Last night, she posted a recording to our neighborhood's group. It was of me having a good time with my husband, joking around. She said she believed I was in danger and asked what to do and who to report it to because I was in denial. People were agreeing with her, calling me names, and told her to keep recording because I was covering for him and complaining how difficult it was to help foreigners when they don't speak English. They called me all sorts of names for covering for my husband, and I was just confused. It wasn't until someone who spoke Spanish chimed in and said that we weren't arguing. Someone else who spoke Polish said the same thing and told her to mind her own business instead of recording people. She removed the recording. Today, she knocked on my door, shouting at me, telling me I humiliated her and I must have done it on purpose to toy with her when she was just concerned. I told her I explained it to her many times, but she wouldn't listen. She just kept shouting and calling me names, and I just shut the door in her face. My neighbor is still furious with me, and I'm confused, and I do feel bad because I understand where she was coming from, and she did have good intentions. Should I have switched to English to avoid this whole situation? It would have been an easy fix. Am I the jerk for confusing her? Edit. I just wanted to clarify. We really weren't loud. Our walls are thin. I can easily hear her talking in her flat, and she talks normally if she's in the adjacent room. She recorded it from the balcony. We had our balcony door open and we're chatting inside. She video recorded from her balcony when she was outside. Our balconies are very close. Not the jerk. Honestly, I'd report her for harassment. And recording you without your knowledge and posting the private conversation to social media? That's a serious invasion of your privacy. You shouldn't have to switch to her language just because she can't stay out of other people's business. Am I the jerk for refusing to answer my girlfriend's question? I, 26 male, have known my best friend, 26 male, since we were 14. We live in 2 different states now, so I don't get to see him nearly as often as I would like to, but we do keep in touch through near daily FaceTimes and pretty constant texts. Because of the distance, my fiance, 27 female, hasn't gotten many chances to meet him in person. We did FaceTime introductions, and they've said brief hellos at a couple weddings we all attended, but they haven't been around each other in many non-formal circumstances. Anytime I see him otherwise, I usually go down to his place for the weekend by myself. He had a pretty rough time in his late teens and early 20s. He was struggling with addiction issues, among other things, to cope with bad life circumstances. He distanced himself from everyone, excluding myself and a handful of others. My family really rallied around him during this time to support him, even from afar, so I'd say all of us are pretty protective of him. They just have to be quiet about it since he isn't interested in anyone other than that aforementioned handful of people seeing him vulnerable. Luckily, he's doing much better now. Last night, my parents hosted a little get-together for my mom's birthday and he was invited. They live at a decent halfway point between us both, so it works perfectly. It was the first time my fiance and him were around each other for more than a few hours in a more casual setting. It became obvious quickly that they don't get along. It also became obvious that because their previous interactions had all included long sleeves, my fiance had never seen my friend's bare arms, which have scars on them. I caught her looking a few times over the course of the night, but I didn't say anything. I'm pretty protective over him, but I knew he could handle it himself if he was too bothered. Towards the end of the night, he did end up making a "my eyes are up here" sort of joking comment. Even my parents pulled me aside at one point to mention it, and it soured their view of her a little. When we got in my car on the way back, she almost immediately asked me what had happened. After being frustrated over her behavior at the party, I told her not to play stupid. It doesn't take a genius to figure out what's up. She told me I was being a jerk and that she just wanted more information, and I said it was incredibly rude to ask things like that, even indirectly. It was a brutal drive home, and I'm rethinking a few things now. Am I the jerk? Edit. For those asking why I don't warn in advance, I've introduced him to people in the past and have never had a reaction like this. He's a human being. I don't exactly think he needs a warning label. You're the jerk. It might have been rude for her to openly ask him, but she didn't. She asked you in private. And if the scars are from this, that she may not have any frame of reference for what those scars look like. I mean, I don't have anybody in my life that struggled with this, so she may just have not realized. You're the jerk. She had no idea what she was walking into. You should have told her beforehand. At the point that you've asked someone to marry you, you should be able to trust them with the story of your best friend, at least enough of it so she isn't blindsided in a social situation. You're the jerk. While I hate to say it, you should have been more sensitive here. Your fiancé may not have been playing stupid and could have been genuinely unsure. Not everyone has seen this sort of thing before, and it may have been confusing for her. I understand that you're protective of your friend and really sensitive to anything that may appear as an attack on him, but you have to give your fiancé the benefit of the doubt here. You probably should have said that her actions may have been interpreted as disrespectful. Unless you truly believe she was being rude on purpose, your actions were a little more brash than they should have been. Am I the jerk for disrespecting a family recipe? Background: I, 24 female, moved out of home for school at 18 and have been living abroad on my own ever since, cooking my own food. I don't believe I'm a picky eater, but I do avoid certain foods, most meat, mayo, vinegar. If I'm invited somewhere and I don't like the food or some of the ingredients, I'll smile and eat anyways, but I avoid these foods if I can choose. My mother knows about it, so when she cooks, she usually will set aside a small portion for me before adding mayo or vinegar. One of the side dishes of yesterday's meal was a potato salad typical of my region. Basically, potato puree with small pieces of veggies and seafood mixed in with mayo. Mayo is a key element of this recipe, which is why I never order that dish, but my mother usually sets aside a portion before adding the mayo. Usually she will set aside a big portion so that other people feel welcome to eat the alternative, no mayo version if they want. Dinners here are always potluck style, but this time she forgot and I arrived at the kitchen on time to set aside a small part that had no mayo yet, not more than 3 or 4 spoons. So when we served dinner, I just took the plate for myself. We have eaten with everyone invited yesterday countless times, and I can't remember any times where any of them ate the no mayo version. I ate the same main as everyone else. One of the family friends noticed my plate was different. She asked me if I didn't think the potato salad was great. I agreed. Then why did my plate look different? And why hadn't I been served from the same dish as the others? I told her mine had no mayo. Did I have any intolerance? No ma'am, I just don't like mayo. But potato salad without mayo is just potato puree. Maybe ma'am, but I enjoy potato puree. At this time, she started insisting I try the real recipe and see how good it is. I told her I grew up with it. I knew it was good, and I was happy everyone enjoyed it. I just preferred my version. I admit I was a bit short. I didn't see my meal choice warranted so much attention. My family hates conflict and was trying to steer the conversation somewhere else, but this person went on a rant about how young people are entitled and unappreciative of their traditions. I looked her dead in the eye and said I did not think I was the entitled one here since I had not gone to her own home to tell her how to eat her own food. Complete silence. She was visibly annoyed, but let my mother change the topic. I believe I was in my right to tell her that she was out of line, but my poor grandpa looked dismayed at the tension, and it probably would have been easier if I had taken a small portion with mayo and politely agreed. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. It's one thing to ask a question about why you had a different side dish out of curiosity, but she doubled down and was trying to go off on you for it. In your own house. That will always make her the jerk. Am I the jerk for breaking a promise and attending my stepdaughter's graduation? I'll start by explaining some backstory. I, 54 male, lost my first wife when my son, 25 male, and daughter, 22 female, were ages 9 and 12. Both my kids took it as hard as you would expect, and to this day have a poor relationship with both my current wife, Doreen, who's 49, and my stepdaughter, Amy, who's 18. I started dating Doreen about 4 months after my wife passed. As such, my kids believe I cheated on their mom. Amy was 5 when we got together, and as such, I see her as my own daughter. On to the actual story. 4 years ago, 2 days before Kay's high school graduation, Amy got very ill while visiting her grandparents and ended up needing emergency surgery. My wife and I rushed to be with Amy, and admittedly, I did not communicate well with Kay. At the time, Kay didn't pick up my calls, so I left her a voicemail and several text messages explaining what happened and telling Kay I was sorry, but I would make it up to her. A few hours go by and I get a call from Kay. She's in hysterics, telling me what a terrible father I am, and stated that if I did not attend her graduation, I would be done to her. I chose to support Amy. True to her words, Kay did not contact me on the day of her graduation, and when I came home, Kay's things had been moved out of the house with a note explaining how we were no longer family and to never contact her again. Luckily, Kay and I were able to reconcile. However, I promised her that I would give her absolutely anything in the world to make her forgive me. She said that she would forgive me as long as I refused to attend Amy's graduation, as this was the only way to make it fair. I agreed at the time, thinking she was just joking or angry and would soon forget about it. This leads me to now. Invitations for Amy's graduation went out, and despite all the hostility, Amy wanted to make sure Kay got one. Kay called Amy later that day and said she would be unable to attend, as she and I would be spending the day together per our agreement. Amy broke down into tears, asking me why I was missing her graduation. I assured her I was not, and that I would speak to Kay. Later, I explained to Kay that I simply could not miss Amy's graduation. Kay launched into a tirade about how I was a liar and a jerk, and how could I do this to her again. I told her that we would talk about it when she calmed down, and she said we would never talk again. My son and our extended family have all taken Kay's side, saying I didn't see how hurt she was at graduation. My wife believes I'm the jerk for even promising that in the first place, as I should have known it would only upset one or both of the girls. And Amy is just sad and confused, wondering why Kay can't stand her. I know keeping my promise and not attending Amy's graduation is probably the only way to salvage my relationship with Kay, but no matter how I look at it, I would feel like I'm punishing Amy for having a medical issue. So, am I the jerk? You're the jerk, and you have been for years. You are a bad father. Kay is correct. You're a liar. You've done nothing to prioritize Kay ever since your new family rolled in. Your relationship with your daughter is done for, and the blood is on your hands. You're the jerk. You replaced your kid's mom with a new family 4 months after she passed. Your kids lost their mom so young, and you don't seem like you prioritized their feelings or helped them deal with things. Instead, you moved on fast. Kay didn't have a mother to attend her graduation, and she needed you there. Could you not have driven to the graduation, then back to the hospital? Yeah, you're the jerk and you know it. You're clutching at straws here in the hopes that someone will validate your poor parenting choices. She moved out all those years ago. You're already on your second chance. You provide Amy with 2 parents all the time, and you choose to leave Kay with no parents. Every time you choose Amy over Kay, you orphan her. The only way you get to keep 3 kids is to skip Amy's graduation as you promised, and you should have told Amy about this long ago. However, you being the poor excuse for a parent that you seem to be, you thought that you'd just blank this promise to the kid whose graduation you skipped. If you break it, you lose Kay, and you'll likely lose your son too. You're the jerk. Edit. And let's not even bother going down the new woman while your kids are still grieving the loss of their mother route. 4 months? Bruh, y'all be wildin' out today. What is wrong with y'all? Am I the jerk for refusing to help my sister with her rent, which will cause her to be evicted, and my niece to transfer to a bad school district? My sister Jessica is irresponsible with money. She tries to live beyond her means and expects someone else to bail her out. This behavior has not changed since having my niece, Valentina, Tina, and Jessica has in fact been even less responsible with her spending. Jessica has been behind on her rent for months. She's treated it like a joke, constantly going to the mall and even taking Tina on an expensive spring break vacation. Jessica's landlord told her that she had one last chance to pay back her rent within the next 2 weeks, or else he would be forced to evict her. Some background on my family is that they all live in a very large house. 2 stories, 7 bedrooms, and a large yard. Family members built it generations ago, so my family pays practically nothing in taxes. But they are not at all well off. Their collective income is so low that they qualify and rely on services such as the food bank. For this reason, they're unable to help Jessica pay back her rent. My family is hoping that I will help, because if Jessica and Tina move into my family's house, Tina would be forced to transfer to a bad school district. Tina's current school will allow her to finish the year, but after, she's expected to transfer and begin 6th grade at a different school district. Jessica is begging me to help with her rent because she doesn't want Tina to have to leave all her friends behind. She's also very worried because the school district within our family's address is known for being a bad one. This district has had many issues since we attended as students. The amount Jessica needs would be a lot for me. It would still be possible for me to give it, but I refused. I told Jessica that this is on her. She chose to live beyond her means and treat her rent issues like a joke. I'm not responsible for her choices. She chose to have a kid. My love for Tina does not make her my responsibility. It will be hard for Tina, but 6th grade is still easier to adapt to a new school, and friend groups constantly change during that age anyway. I also reminded Jessica that despite the issues at this school district, we didn't get involved in any of those bad activities because we were taught not to give in to peer pressure. Tina is a smart girl, and I'm sure she'll be fine. My family has told me that they are disappointed in Jessica, but are disappointed in me as well. And they said that Jessica is irresponsible, but that they hoped I would put my niece's well-being first. I still feel that this situation is entirely of Jessica's making, and she has sole responsibility for it. Besides, it's not as if Jessica or Tina will be homeless. They'll be able to stay at the family house. Tina will still have access to an education, even if it's not as good as the one offered by her previous school district. Am I the jerk for refusing to help with Jessica's rent? Not the jerk. Your sister had money, she just spent it. And the bad outcome here is not so bad. She'll still have housing and a functional, if not preferred, school. It's a hard lesson, but she needs to learn it. Not the jerk. If you help Jessica right now, she'll be back in the same spot in 6 months. Instead, you're helping her by forcing her to live with non-catastrophic consequences of her actions, and hopefully she changes her behavior. Neighbors demand my parking space so their kids can play in it. I, 27 female, am currently single. I purchased a nice big apartment in a quiet neighborhood a few years ago, and along with it, I also got 3 parking spaces, each for about $25,000. This is a lot of money, but at the time, I figured parking was crap, and it was about to get worse in terms of availability. That turned out to be true. I have 2 cars, and my ex used to have 1, so we used all 3 spaces. Recently, we broke up, and I started traveling a lot. I let my baby cousin use one of the cars, so I had 2 free parking spots. I offered them to my only neighbor, which I like. She's engaged but has no kids. I rented them both to her for $100, even though realistically rent should be $700 to $800. I checked prices and they're going crazy. One space rents for $300 to $400. The rest of our neighbors were not a favorite choice of mine because honestly, they suck. One of my parking spaces is kind of small, and I have a big BMW which I parked in that spot one night. The next day, they had parked in such a way that I was unable to move without crashing into someone. When I asked them to move their cars and promised to just switch around parking spots so issues don't repeat, I got the answer. "You are smart enough to leave your car there. You should be smart enough to get it out. Don't you have a million cars? Go drive somewhere else." I got them towed and they screamed at me, so that was fun. Suffice to say, we are not friends with the 4 families involved in this fiasco, which is why my lovely neighbor, Sky, that even defended me, got my parking spots. People noticed Sky's cars, and only a few days later, they made a building association meeting, something I haven't been invited to in a year, and sat me down and let me know that the parking situation is unfair. They said I have to put the parking spots up for the whole building and have a rent auction for who will pay the most. They said they feel I was being unfair as they had kids and Sky doesn't. I felt bad and talked it over with Sky. She agreed her and her fiance can manage with one of the bigger spaces, which barely fits 2 cars, the second blocking the first. Well, they weren't happy. Apparently, they all wanted this big parking space because it is in the shade and they can put slides and other contraptions for their kids to play in. I let them know this makes me uncomfortable as I will be back at some point and I do not want anyone to invest in anything. They called me selfish and a jerk. I got upset and told one of the moms who was on my case that kids are a choice and that does not make her special. She kept saying, "No wonder you are single. No wonder you don't have kids." She called me a rich, spoiled brat. No one except Sky speaks with me anymore. Should I just give them the parking spot they want? Am I the jerk? No way. You shouldn't even give them a chance to rent any of your spaces. They can't choose who you rent to. You own it, you get to decide. For all they know, you're not renting it. You just told your neighbor they could park there. Forget them. If they come at you with some BS, tell them to call your lawyer. OP, I'm trying to figure something out because at the end of the day, I gotta look at them every day and watch them sneer and scowl. I know parking spaces are mine, and ultimately the decision is up to me. I may be second-guessing the fairness of it all and how I acted. I have told them off and have refused to talk about it anymore. I guess I just want a more grown-up solution. I don't even understand why they're fighting so hard for 2 spaces, which I will most likely reclaim in a month when I get homesick. Not the jerk. Do not listen to them. Get a lawyer. Have all communications regarding the spaces referred to your lawyer. Get business cards from him to hand out. Don't listen to people who don't care about you. Also, get cameras for your residence and enjoy your life. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay for my stepson's tuition? Some quick background knowledge. My mom passed when I was 8 years old, and upon her passing, my dad and I discovered she was much wealthier than we thought. She set up an education fund with enough money to put me through college and grad school and attend a private school. I attended a private school I had a partial scholarship to, and then went to college on a full scholarship I worked insanely hard for. I went to grad school on no scholarship, so I dipped into a bit of the education money. However, after all of this, I still had quite a bit of money left over, so I planned to use it for any kids I had in the future. And now the present. My biological daughter, Anna, who's 17, female, has attended a private high school and recently got into a good college on a partial scholarship. She wants to go to medical school. Between the three of those, if she can get a partial scholarship to medical school, I would be able to help her out significantly, so she would be in very little debt. I realized how insanely privileged we are to have this opportunity, and both my daughter and I are super happy to have it. I have a stepson, Jake, who's 18, who is also going to college this fall. He didn't go to the same high school as Anna because he didn't get in, so he went to the local public high school. He's still an excellent athlete and student, and that landed him a partial scholarship at his top choice college. Obviously, I was super elated and super proud of both my kids. Here's where the issue comes in. My husband and I, who have been married for 3 years now, came up with a plan for parenting/financing and all that stuff. We plan to keep most of the money separate when it comes to kids. Obviously, we'd both contribute to buying them presents and stuff, but we left cars, college, etc. up to the other one, and it's worked out pretty well. Both Anna and Jake have cars that they paid half for, and we matched whatever they saved. I matched for Anna, and my husband matched for Jake. So for college, it was obviously decided my husband had Jake's stuff under control and I'd be dealing with Anna's. However, my husband finds it very unfair that Anna will be in no debt and Jake will be in debt, since I'm covering Anna's college costs but not Jake's. My husband says it's unfair that Anna will have an easier life than Jake, and called both of us spoiled and entitled kids for not sharing the money. My mother-in-law also dropped by yesterday and told me I was being unfair and I should help Jake out, and that I clearly loved him less. I explained to both of them that this was the agreement my husband agreed to, and he only has a problem because Anna will end up doing better now. Mother-in-law and husband are both giving me and Anna the silent treatment. Am I the jerk? Edit. Jake's mother is out of the picture. She left years ago, and neither Jake nor my husband are in contact with her or know where she is, as far as I'm aware at least. Anna's father passed soon after she was born. Not the jerk. Each agreed to take care of your own kids. How is it suddenly unfair? Your hubby is the jerk, and if Granny wants to join in, tell her to crack open her purse and chip in since she's so insulted. OP, what a great suggestion. Definitely using that against my mother-in-law. You've only been married for 3 years. That money long predates him. You should ask him if he enjoyed growing up with a mother, then tell mother-in-law if she's so concerned about her kids' and grandkids' education, maybe she can go off and pass like your mother did. They need a reality check of how privileged they are, and that this money didn't just manifest itself out of nowhere. You suffered a major loss, and this is what's left. Your daughter will always be your daughter, but if things don't work out for you or your hubby, statistically speaking, Jake will no longer be your stepson, and you will never see the money again, and your daughter will be further in debt because of it. It might not sound like it, but I'm very sorry for the loss of your mother. Not the jerk. The two of you had an agreement, which he had no problem with until now. What does Jake think about this situation? It sounds like your husband is just unhappy that his biological son isn't doing as well as your biological daughter. OP. I think Jake wishes he had the money, but he's not blowing it out of proportion and is currently asking his grandmother and dad to drop it. He's being very nice to both Anna and I. It's his father who's dragging this out. Don't want me to work during my notice? Okay, I won't. This happened almost 5 years ago. Some details are intentionally vague. I was working in an organization that was super toxic, so much so that we were a revolving door. Most employees stayed only a few months. To counter this, our management put 3 months' notice into everyone's contract, including existing employees. It's not strictly illegal where this happened, but very unusual. I believe the idea was to make it harder for employees to find a job outside, as employers didn't usually want to wait for 3 months. However, this didn't work, as people simply quit and waited for a month or two before starting their job hunt. I was there almost 4 years. I needed the money, so I put up with whatever crap was thrown at me. My boss was a guy we'll call Vince, not his actual name. Now, Vince was not particularly good, but he sometimes respected the fact that I was the most tenured grunt in the organization. Do note that after about 2 years, I was doing a lot of additional work in addition to my official responsibilities, primarily because I was the only one who knew how to do those. Everyone else had already left. This will become important later. Enter Rajesh, not actual name. Rajesh was poached from a somewhat infamous company and was literally flown in from a different continent. He was brought in for strategically improving our division. This was quite strange given our division generated most profits. Within months, Rajesh made the environment even more toxic. He pulled Vince's team under him and got Vince fired, and he actively encouraged us grunts to spy on each other. Rajesh also had it out for me from day one. Till today, I don't know why. He started making my life more hard than others. This culminated in him taking me aside and telling me that I was not pulling my weight. Now at this point, I was doing quite well in the organization, and I had been doing a lot of additional work critical to our business since only I knew certain systems and processes. So I was quite angry. I started looking out. I still wasn't brave enough to quit and start looking. Fortunately, I was able to find a job that was willing to wait the 3 months. So it was my turn to take Rajesh aside and tell him that I quit. Boy, Rajesh was angry. He went from denial, "You can't quit," to negotiation, "What if I give you a raise at the end of the year?" to acceptance. Thus, I was serving my notice and working away like an honest bee, my usual work plus the additional work. At this point, I was called by HR and told that Rajesh wanted me gone. The insane part was that they wanted me to pay the company for the 2.5-month shortfall in notice. I obviously refused, then went back and checked the contract. Turns out a notice of less than 3 months could only happen through mutual consent, and the initiating party, company if they wanted me gone sooner, or me if I wanted to leave earlier, had to compensate the other party for the shortfall. The next day, I stopped doing almost all of my work. I logged in and logged out my hours and did nothing. I stopped doing any additional work I have been doing and started taking it really slow on my primary job responsibilities. Since no one else understood the details of what I did, I knew it would be really hard for Rajesh or HR to prove I was doing any of this on purpose. Then I sat back with my popcorn. Soon, there was a complete meltdown all around. Rajesh would pull me into meetings and scream and try to bully me, and I would say nothing but smirk to his face. Then they tried to have someone else learn the additional work I used to do from me so that they could do what I did. Remember I said earlier how I was the only one who knew some of the old systems and processes? Well, now I claimed I didn't really remember any of them, so obviously there could be no handover. Rajesh could do nothing as none of this had been my responsibility or part of my contract, since the leadership had been only too happy to see me do this for free. Soon, my workplace turned into a dumpster fire. The HR and Rajesh smartened up and offered to buy out my notice if I cooperated and helped transition my work. I refused. Then, to twist it further, I started having meetings with fellow grunts. Remember, everyone was always a newbie, and encouraged them to leave as well. Indirectly, nothing that could implicate me. HR tried to get me to leave twice more, but I ended up serving the full 3 months. My wife keeps demanding I take pictures of her. My wife and I have been married for 1 year, and we've been together for about 7. An argument that recurs frequently, especially when we're on vacation, centers around her desire to take multiple photos and my absolute disdain for being the person who has to take all of them. Here's how it typically plays out. We visit a new place, she immediately asks me to take her picture. I oblige, but then she goes off on me if the picture is ugly or if she thinks I made little attempt to take a good picture. So then I have to take another one. She reviews, and the process repeats until she's satisfied. Personally, I've never been big on taking photos while on vacation, and I have not traveled a lot internationally. I like to be in the moment, take in the whole sight, and get lost in my thoughts. However, I feel like I have to interrupt this experience multiple times to take her pictures or get into a selfie with her. Then I lose out on the experience because all of a sudden a photo takes precedence. In the past, I've snapped a quick picture with little effort to get back to what I was there to do, experience something new. After getting called out multiple times for my low effort, I now attempt to take a good picture or at least listen to her instructions so that I can get the picture to her liking. But recently, she's called my pictures ugly, even when I've made an attempt to take good photos. This results in me taking dozens of pictures in the same place, of the same person, with the same backdrop, until she's satisfied, or until I lose patience and tell her that I'm done. Moreover, she's even gotten upset with me for posting a picture of her to social media that she didn't like, even though I actually thought the picture looked good. My wife is naturally gorgeous physically, but I don't need a good picture to show that. I'd like to consider myself a creative, and sometimes I just like a good candid picture of her eating an ice cream or fixing her glasses. But if I unwittingly share said photo on social media, a whole argument ensues. I think the whole situation is stupid. In my opinion, photographs are an afterthought, a tool, not the main objective. I want to see new things and experience new people. I have little desire to take pictures beyond what I need to remember the moment, or to capture something aesthetically pleasing. I know it's reasonable to want pictures of yourself, but at some point, the whole exercise becomes excessive. In my opinion, that point is when the pictures begin to distract from the whole purpose we're there, to see and experience something new. My wife and I are currently in Italy, sitting silently in a hotel room because I objected to her 20th something selfie in front of the Colosseum. It's raining, and I wanted to move to the next site. We had already taken many photos together in front of the Colosseum. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. She's telling you this is important to her, and you're saying, okay, well, I think it's stupid. I'm a visual person. I've taken more than 30,000 photos on trips. I sketch, I paint, I make photo books after my trips. They're special for me. There's literally a meme of a boyfriend being in an awkward angle just to get a really great photo of his girlfriend because he supports her. You can easily compromise here. Set a time limit. I'll take as many photos of you as you want for 5 minutes, then we move on. But nope, you've decided it's stupid and unimportant and are likely actively damaging your relationship with your wife. For what? Well, it's settled. If there's an actual meme of something, we need to be willing to put up with it. Ain't that right, Reddit boy? The only thing I plan to put up with is the divorce attorney. How dare you! Stop bothering us with that deadline. Okay then, if you insist. Some background. I, 27 female, work in IT. I'm a well-respected and known member of the IT party circle, where I live, so to speak. I'm not jaw-dropping, but people know me, and I have a very good reputation. One of the things is that I got to the point in my career when I wanted to give back, so I started mentoring others. Mostly I mentored adults and those who were closer to me in age. Career advice, how to apply for different exchange programs that can boost their professional growth and improve their speaking and writing skills, the usual. But I always loved a good challenge and decided to try and mentor kids. It's not a secret that IT and STEM are increasingly popular right now, and more people want to get into the field. Therefore, there are myriads of boot camps, hackathons, and mentoring programs for all ages. So I signed up for one such program as a mentor. Teach kids how to code with blocks, tell them what AI is, and how to develop an MVP. It sounds more complicated than it might look at first glance, especially when you're an educated professional with a degree explaining concepts that are rather complicated to kids who may have less than 1/50th of your tech knowledge. I must add that participation in the said program gives kids credits and can help them get into better schools or even be eligible for some university scholarships later in life. So only pros if you ask me. The only thing is that they must upload their MVP project to the site before the deadline. I was assigned 2 teams, primary, early middle schoolers, Team A, and high schoolers, Team B. Both had 5 members, and the youngest, in Team A, was 8 years old. I thought, OMG, that will be tough, thinking about Team A and how I'm up for a tough time. Also, since they're so young, the parents must observe Team A meetings and my lessons, and parents equal problems. Ironically, despite my worries, even with help from the parents, the kids in Team A were doing great. But the same can't be said about Team B. A little side note, with my mentees, I have 2 rules. 1. At least 1 meeting per week. At least 50% of the group must be present. 2. Communication. When I type something like tasks to do or reply to a question asked before, I ask my mentees to respond. Not even text, a thumbs up emoji will also suffice. We all know that red status doesn't mean much when you can accidentally open an app for a second and swipe it to clear RAM on the phone. So Team A attended all the meetings and responded to my assignments. There was a curriculum provided by a program to follow, and they were very well receptive overall. Team B started out okay, but then started not showing up on meetings and leaving assignments on read, but unresponded. I understand that they have a lot on their plate. Exams are no joke, but they disregarded my time, which I will not be okay with. I have a job to do, and mentoring in that program was 100% volunteering, and there was no payment for the mentors. There was, however, a very strict deadline, the middle of April, when their MVPs must be loaded onto the website for later judgment. I, even when upset, am a professional first and an angry lady second. So I wrote multiple messages asking for updates on the project, with warnings at the end that deadline is April 15th, don't miss it. After one such message, the so-called leader of Team B, Sam, wrote to me this. Hi OP, I know that you probably mean well, but you only bother the team with those deadline messages. Can't you chill out? When we need you, we will contact you and all. Just get off our hair and let us do our job. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings. It is what it is. Hard. After I read that message, I was like, what? But I did respond that I would stop messaging if that caused tension between the team. Though the deadline is still on the 15th, and the site would reject any application that was uploaded after. Just stop, okay? Jeez, weird little face emoji thing, said Sam to that. So I decided, okay, I'm washing my hands from this. Cue malicious compliance. Since that message, I haven't written anything to Team B. I had scheduled no meetings, updates, or checkups about the curriculum or their understanding, and definitely not a written reminder of the deadline once. Deadline came, Team A uploaded their project with no issues, and their parents even bought me a nice box of chocolates as a thank you gesture. Just like the deadline came and went, Team B started bombarding chat, asking me to help because something is wrong with the site. We can't upload our project. I entered the chat and said, yes, it will not upload. No, it is not an issue with the site. The deadline has passed. So if you try to upload, it will only show you an error message. I warned you kids. No extra credits, no nothing. The rules of that program are simple, but they are hard, no exception ones. Team B tried to blame me, saying that as a mentor, it was my job to ensure they would succeed. I reminded them that my job as a mentor is to provide support and guidance, keep track of their progress, and remind them of the deadline, which, all of the above, they, via Sam, asked me not to. And since I respected their boundaries, I did exactly what they had requested. They can sulk as much as they want. I have all our communication in writing, so they don't have a leg to stand on when trying to accuse me of sabotaging them in the program. Tough luck, kids. Return the car empty? Done. Talking to my grandmother earlier today reminded me of this story from a number of years ago. I live in Sydney and used to fly up to the Gold Coast 3 or 4 times a year to check on my grandmother. The whole family was in Sydney, so someone would usually pop up once each month to help her out. Anyway, I would always rent a car from Hertz when I arrived. At the time, they offered a prepaid fuel option where you would pay an amount and not need to refuel before return. It was usually less than you would pay at the local service station, so I usually took this option. As I picked up the keys to this shiny new manual Toyota Corolla, the woman simply said to me, "So you have the prepaid fuel, just bring it back empty." After a few days of relaxing by the beach, I ran a few errands for my grandmother in the morning before my 1500 flight when the fuel light comes on and the words of Hertz staff ring in my ear, "Bring it back empty." Not wanting to push it, I pulled into 7-Eleven and put 2 liters in and went on my way. The light didn't extinguish, but with the distance I needed to cover, I figured I'd be safe. About 1300, my grandmother is pushing me out the door, telling me to catch my flight, so I make the 6-kilometer trip to the airport, the whole time anxiously wondering if I'll make it with the fuel remaining. As I was coming up on the airport, I felt the engine splutter, but it was still going. Heading in, it started spluttering more, so much that I genuinely thought I'd run out mere meters from my destination. As I pulled through the boom gate for rental returns, I put my foot down and got a final burst of acceleration. The car, determined to be the little engine that could, my finish line in sight and the car is going to make it. Until it didn't. The car stalled. With the momentum I had, I pulled it into a spot marked AVIS. It only made it about halfway in. I tried in vain to restart it, but it wasn't to be. I got out and pushed the little engine that could into Bay 109. It was 11 bays short of the first marked Hertz and was a broken man. My goal so near yet so far. Torment ran through my mind. Did those 11 bays mean I was short of my goal to bring it back empty? I mean, it was in the rental car park after all, and it wasn't uncommon for people to just park in a spot and ignore who owns the spot. I walk into the terminal, carry on roller bay in one hand, car keys in the other, and walk up to the rental returns. "Can I help you?" the same young woman asks as I walk up to her. "Returning a car," I said. She takes the paperwork and asks where I had parked it. "Bay 109, it says Avis," I respond, her not looking up. She shrugs and talks into the radio on the counter. "Return 109. Finally, she says, "Did you fill it up?" I say no, and she asks roughly how much is left in it. "None," I say. "Oh, so the petrol light is on? No worries," she says. "No," I say. "I mean, it ran out of fuel as I drove in. I had to push it into the parking lot." The helpful woman gives me a blank stare for a full 10 seconds. "Wait, you let it run out?" "You said return it empty, so I accepted your challenge. Seems I win," I said with a mixture of pride and embarrassment. The staff member turns to her colleague, points at me, and says, "Prepaid fuel, and he says it ran out in the car park." The guy looks at me with a smirk and says, "Really? Well, it wouldn't start back up." I reply as someone comes in from outside to get the keys. "It's out of fuel," the woman says. "That's okay. I'll run it up to Shell after I've washed it," he replies. Both terminal staff look at him as the woman, looking at me, says, "No, the customer says he had to push it into the spot." Cue the largest eyes I've ever seen. I have to see this. He walks out with me, and the guy from behind the counter following behind opens the car and tries to start it. It's cranking but won't turn over as all three of us burst out laughing. "I've never had one fully out before," he says, when I tell him, "The woman in there told me to bring it back empty," as I walk inside, laughing to check my bags. My stepson is demanding my engagement ring. I, 49 female, have been with my husband Bill, 53 male, for the past 20 years. Bill had 2 kids from his previous marriage, Jim, who's 31, and Paige, who's 27. We also have 1 biological kid together, Harry, who's 16. Jim and Paige's mom passed when they were 9 and 5. I met Bill around 2 years after his former wife had passed. When I started building a relationship with the kids, I made it clear that I was not going to replace their mom and would be a trusted figure whom they could approach if they ever needed me. That being said, I still made an effort to treat them like I would my own kid. I would take them to school, pick them up, take them to doctor's appointments, make their lunches, ask my parents to get them presents for Christmas and birthdays, etc. Both kids were somewhat hostile towards me at first, which I understand because they had lost their mom. However, Paige eventually warmed up to me and saw me as a trusted confidant and maternal figure. She didn't ask me, nor did I expect her to want me to adopt her, but she still calls me mom, which I appreciate. Jim, on the other hand, continued to be mean and hostile. I've never treated him poorly or antagonized him. Nevertheless, he would make mean statements like, "It's your job to clean these dishes," when I would ask him to clean his plate or call me names when my back was turned. My husband told him many times that the way he was treating me was uncalled for and for us to go to family therapy, but he always refused. He eventually moved out after reaching adulthood. He continues to maintain contact with his father and siblings, but it's minimal between him and me, and even then he doesn't treat me well. Now, I have an engagement ring that's a family heirloom for several generations. It's been passed down from the mother to the oldest kid. My husband got the ring from my mom to propose to me. I told all 3 kids about this heirloom a few years ago. Anyway, Jim currently has a girlfriend whom he intends to propose to. He called me out of the blue one day and asked if he could have the ring. I told him no. When he asked why, I told him it was because of how he's treated me all these years and how he continues to treat me, and I don't want my family heirloom going to someone who sees me as vermin. When he asked whom it would go to, I told him it would go to Paige when she gets engaged. When he heard this, he lost his crap and accused me of playing favorites. I eventually hung up when he wouldn't stop insulting me, and I blocked his number. My husband is on my side, but his maternal relatives have all been blowing up my phone, telling me what a jerk I am. So, am I the jerk? Wait, you're not even his biological mom? Why does he need your family heirloom if he hasn't welcomed you into his family? You're giving it to your oldest kid, I'm assuming, meaning the oldest kid that has accepted you as family, not the oldest biological. Not the jerk. He's had plenty of time to grow up and treat you like a real person. If his maternal family is so concerned, You should ask them where his mother's family's ring is. Am I the jerk for ruining my brother's relationship? I, 28 female, always had a great relationship with my brother, who's 38, and the rest of my family. When my son, who's now 5, was born, they supported me through a lot, especially since my baby's father abandoned us. The problem started when he met his girlfriend, in her 30s, in university. At the start, I was truly happy for him, especially since he had talked to me about wanting to ask her out ever since he heard about her from his classmates. What I didn't like is that she didn't care much to keep in contact with us. Even after being together for well over a year, she was always too busy to meet our family. He told me she was an amazing cook, was kind, brilliant, etc., and he always wanted to marry her and travel with her back to her country once she finished her PhD. He'd always talked to us about how lucky he was to be dating her. She's a judge, and how her government was financing her. I'll admit, knowing a childless woman wasn't working and was paid more money than me, on top of having her rent and other things covered, stung a little, but it had nothing to do with my dislike of her. I wanted her to be more involved in our family, but there was always an excuse as to why she couldn't meet us for dinners, etc. She'd be studying, helping someone from abroad, which I don't really believe. What could she be doing for anyone being miles away? And on the rare occasions she was free, she either would travel to see her family, hosted friends, or wanted to be alone. I didn't buy that she didn't have any time for us because she doesn't work and was always at home, but she stopped accepting my visits and refused anything to do with me or my son as well, which slowly distanced my brother. She wouldn't even babysit when my parents were out of town and I needed her to watch him so I could work. Personally, I don't think she's as kind as my brother thought. My parents were on my side. Brother wanted to be neutral, but asked us to not stress her out even more. A few days ago, me and my parents went to her house to talk things out with them both. We were upset, but tried our best to explain why her distance and refusal to help was unacceptable since she doesn't work and has free time. I told her I wished she'd be more caring, and she got increasingly angrier, but said nothing. Then she turned to my brother and asked him if he agreed, but he said he didn't want to take sides. She said that this was another example of why she felt so resistant to the idea of getting into a relationship, that she couldn't take it anymore and felt better being alone, and then broke up with him. I was shocked. None of us expected this, and my brother immediately tried to backtrack, but she told all of us to leave her house immediately and to not go back. Now I'm feeling guilty, and my brother won't speak to us because I ruined his relationship, and she's irreducible. She isn't bothering to listen to anyone in our family, and I'm afraid there's no way to fix this. Am I the jerk, or did she overreact? Edit. When I said I wanted her to be more involved and caring, I meant I wanted her to care enough to at least attend a few of the parties and dinners and other things we invited her to, because we wanted to get to know her and develop a relationship with her, especially since she had told my brother she had no plans of returning to or visiting the US once she got the degree, since she felt uncomfortable here. Gee, I wonder why. She was a possible future sister-in-law, and we'd lose her and our brother if they moved together, and she had no relationship with us to ever want to visit. I didn't want nor expected babysitting unless I had no one else to ask in an emergency like the one I mentioned. Then I asked her because I thought that since she was on a paid leave from work, she could be flexible. But from what I read, from all of these responses, some who didn't need to be so mean by the way, it seems I was wrong to assume that. Also, by not wanting anything to do with my son, I also meant that she gray-rocked me when I tried to speak to her about him or show photos. You're the jerk. Not her responsibility to watch your kids or be there for your whims or amusement. And be honest with yourself. The fact that she's childless and does have free time bothers you. You're not entitled to her time. Keep repeating that to yourself until it gets through to you. You can't use a competitor's phone. Well, folks, for those of you who don't know, I work on cell phone towers. I used to work in an extremely remote rural area for a now defunct small cell phone company. The conversations are to the best of my recollection. The area I worked was the type of area where you could drive for hours and not see anything but fields, forests, and animals. Most of the sites I had were what were referred to as island sites, meaning they don't hand off to another cell tower. And most of these sites were about 30 minutes apart on a good day. Well, I worked nights, but you get the drift. So it came around that a competitor had located quite a few sites near our sites. I, being of the mindset of efficiency, purchased a phone from them, and with approval from my boss, kept it ready, especially during upgrades. but he was the type when anyone above him says boo, he'd jump and ask how high. So a couple of months later, boss's boss leaves and we get new boss's boss, who spent 250% of his life in the confines of New York City. Within his first week, he's working the switch and sees me call in from our competitor's number. Of course, he takes offense to this, and it quickly comes down that nobody may use a competitor's phone. I bring up my concerns, but they don't need to do this in New York City, so we're not going to do this. Mind you, my job is to shut down our sites and upgrade or repair them. Yes, I'm the guy you love to hate when you can't make a phone call. And so it happens a short time later, I'm at one of my most remote sites, a 45-minute drive to the next site on a good day, about 4 hours from home. I do my diligence, call the switch, tell them what I need them to change and shut down the site. An hour later, site's not up. I go through everything on my end. Yep, everything's good. Oh no. Now there's a couple of payphones, but they were the competitor's phone. So I start driving. It takes me about an hour and a half to get to the next site because of a freak blizzard. Crap, that site's down too. Roll on to the next site, usually about 30 minutes, but it's snowing hard and the roads are horrible. 2.5 hours on the road after leaving the original site, I finally get service. Pull over, and in 5 minutes, we figured out the switch crossed a number and took down the wrong site. Switch promises to fix it, and I drive 3 hours back to the original site. 30 minutes later, it's still not up. This time, it takes an hour to get to the closest site, call the switch again, and get it up. And after about 30 minutes, I verify it's up. Hooray! But I still have to drive back, clean up, and make some testing calls. 18 some odd hours after I left my driveway, I pull back in and submit my time, complete with the overtime. It's my Friday. I turn off my phone and hit the bed. Monday morning, I turn on my phone for our weekly call-in meeting, and I kid you not, it buzzes with new texts and voicemails for 20 straight minutes, all from boss and boss's boss. I jump on the call, and first thing I hear is boss's boss. Why did you have a nearly 9-hour outage for a 30-minute upgrade? Before I get a word in. And how dare you claim 9 hours of overtime when you were clearly messing around, not doing your job? Me. Well, there were a series of issues outside of the site, and a freak snowstorm slowed my response. I hit send on emails I had already prepared before clocking out for the weekend with full rundown of events for the night, as a reply to the emails coming down from him dismissing my needs for a competitor's phone, and included his boss, vice president of the company. I don't want to hear excuses from you. Why didn't you just use a payphone and call for help? Literally everyone on the call groaned. Me. In case you don't remember, I just replied to a series of emails where you forbade me under threat of termination from using a competitor's phone. At this point, I hear VP join our call. And since payphones are owned by a competitor, I spent 6 hours driving around in a blizzard searching for service, instead of spending 45 minutes to an hour making a call on a competitor's phone. I never threatened to terminate anyone. Don't be stupid. You could have used a payphone. VP cuts in. It appears, bad boss, that you do not remember what you said, and Mr. Kerr has clearly documented his actions on the night in question. Bad boss, please call me immediately. Thank you everyone else for your time this morning. Please have a good day. This meeting is over. Bad boss was removed shortly afterwards, having a fairly rocky rest of his short employment. I now work for the company which purchased our competitor. I've moved to my home state, but I still work a rural market. It's not quite as bad. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.